It is October 1st, 2021, and the time now is 8:37 a.m. This meeting is being held via Blue Jeans teleconferencing. Also, if anyone out there would like to watch this meeting on TV instead of their computer or phone, it's being shown live on Akaku on channel 54. I will be taking roll call.
Excuse me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair. It's Jen.
Yes.
I don't know what it looks like to everybody else on Blue Jeans, but I don't see you. It's just a black looking fuzzy thing. Green.
Ridiculous. How many years does he have on? How many years?
Could you maybe hold off
Sorry, he didn't stay
for checking on that?
Okay, then we'll call.
Okay.
Hey, Jeremy. Oh, damn.
Don't say.
All right, thank you.
Chair, I think your video is muted. Oh, okay, wait, I see you now.
There we go.
Okay, I see you. Thank you.
Okay, good. I guess everybody has to see me, right? Whether here or on channel 54. This meeting is held via Blue Jeans teleconferencing. Also, if anyone out there would like to watch this meeting on TV instead of their computer or phone, it's being shown live on Akaku channel 54. I will be taking roll call, but do want to put on the record that 8 out of 9 of the commissioners are present here with me at Maui College in room 105 CD to interview the candidates in person, and the 9th commissioner is appearing via Blue Jeans. I would ask everyone here present in the room to set their electronic devices to silent mode. So I'm going to check as well. Silent mode on. There we go. I'm going to do a roll call. Please also state if anyone is present with you. I'll first go, hopefully, to make it easy on the 8 commissioners here with me. When it's their turn to say, when I call their name, they can just say same as the chair, okay? Since we're all here present, okay, if they so wish. So roll call, me, Chair DeRego is present, Vice Chair Patno.
Same as the chair.
Commissioners Kuahara.
Same as the chair.
Commissioner Leach.
Same as the chair.
Commissioner Moniz.
Same as the chair.
Commissioner Rediker.
Same as the chair.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Same as the chair.
And Commissioner Tancayo.
Same as the chair.
Okay, are all present with me, as well as our board secretary, Amy Lau. Oh, and Commissioner Mano on Blue Jeans. Okay, there we go. Nice to see your happy face, sir. Okay. As well as our board secretary, Amy Lau, Akaku's Chivo Ching, and Maui IT. Deanna, what's your last name? Okay, good. I'm glad I asked. Mahalo. Okay, so moving on to the item of the day, interviews of the final candidates for Chief of Police. Everett Ferreira, Lawrence Hudson, John Jacobzak, John Pelletier, okay. Victor Ramos. With reference to the agenda items listed above, one or more executive meetings are anticipated pursuant to HRS 92-5A, subsections 2 and 4, to consider the hire, evaluation, dismissal, or discipline of an officer or employee, or of charges brought against the officer or employee, where consideration of matters affecting privacy will be involved, and to consult with the Commission's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the Commission's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Although I just read that notice, the executive meetings are anticipated. We will be holding the interviews in open session unless considerations of matters affecting privacy will be involved. First, I would like to thank the public, the commissioners, and the final 5 candidates for their patience as the Police Commission paves the way in Maui County for increased openness and transparency in hiring of the Chief of Police. As they say in the world of business startups, we have done a lot of pivoting in the last week. Next, I would like to welcome the 5 candidates today to this special meeting of the Commission and the interviews for the position of Chief of Police. The Commission has set some ground rules. We would ask the candidates to secure their cell phones or other electronic devices as they will not be used during the interview. The Commission has decided that no paper and writing instruments as well will be used. The way we will be conducting the interviews is that I will ask each candidate the first question, and they will each in turn answering that question. I will then ask the second question to each candidate, but starting with a different candidate so that no candidate always has to go first, and so on. There are 15 questions, so each candidate will be the first to answer 3 and the last to answer 3 questions. And the rest of the questions you'll be answering somewhere in the middle. Okay? Each candidate will have a maximum of 5 minutes to answer each of the questions, and as one of the candidates asked, we'll be giving you a 1-minute warning before your 5 minutes is up. Because this meeting is open to the public to watch or listen to in real time via Blue Jeans or Akaku, I do want to inform the candidates that the Commission could go into executive session, meaning close a portion of the meeting to the public if consideration of matters affecting privacy will be involved. The candidate feels that their answer may involve privacy concerns or highly personal and intimate information. Before you answer, please inform me that your answer will involve privacy concerns and the Commission may decide to go into executive session. The operative word is may. It will be up to the Commission to decide whether to go into executive session, but does not have to under the Sunshine Law. The Commission does hold executive session. The other candidates and non-essential personnel will be asked to leave the room. We will take a lunch break. I don't want to tell you the exact time now, as I don't want to do it in the middle of a question. For example, if we're on question 5 at noon and some candidates have already answered, we will complete each candidate's answer to question 5 before we take a break, okay? We also will have short restroom breaks. I anticipate one mid-morning and one afternoon, but not if everyone, but if anyone, commissioners or candidates need to have a restroom break, please let me know. To members of the public, please mute your video and audio so the candidates can answer the questions uninterrupted. If anyone appears to be unmuted on Blue Jeans, I will direct staff to mute them. I don't think anyone would appreciate being interrupted in an interview. So I ask that we all give these candidates the same respect. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so this first question is going to be different for every candidate, okay? Because there's a little intro that goes along with it, okay? So we'll start with candidate Ferreira. The question would be, you have had a brilliant 42-year law enforcement career. Why now do you want to become chief of police?
Interesting question. Thank you for allowing me to be here, Commissioner, Chair DeRego, Vice Chair Pat Noyd, and the rest of the commissioners. I'm one of those guys that love the job, enjoy the job, and interacting with members of the police department and the community. The passion is still there, and I feel that I can just add and create an environment that would be safe for everyone. That's my main objective. Because if you really think of it, who wants to be a police chief in times of times like this, when the nation and the world is going kind of crazy, And just to put it, finding good applicants or retaining officers, that is the biggest challenge that every department has. And I hope I can beat that challenge. That's why I'm staying on.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson, you had a brilliant 33-year law enforcement career and have been retired, correct me if I'm wrong, for about 7 years now?
That is correct.
Okay. Why do you want to return to the department as chief?
Thank you, Commission, for allowing me to speak. Thank you for considering me for this candidacy. As I mentioned during the test and was written in the Maui News, my concern came up with transparency. Let me talk just a minute before we get to that. When I joined the police department, I was the youngest person ever hired for the Maui Police Department at the ripe old age of 18. I actually grew up in the department, and as such, I developed a work ethic. I developed a rapport with my community. I developed a rapport with my department. When I left my department, I left it, I thought, in very good hands. As time goes by, and I have no animus towards anybody, as time goes by, it seems that that's not truly the case. Or it could be that it is the case. I think my department is a very, very good department. I think we have outstanding people, but there seems to be something amiss. And while I enjoy being retired, and there's no lie about that, I put back in to make sure that if there's a problem, I would like to find it and weed it out and move on with my retirement. So why am I here? I'm here for the specific goal of bettering my department and better serving my community. The community demands transparency, but more importantly, it's owed transparency. And it's the job of the department to make sure that happens. And there's step-by-step things we can do to ensure that that transparency stays in place. And the selection of a chief is probably the biggest, largest step in that direction. Thank you.
Candidate Jacobzak, thank you. You can correct me anytime I murder your names, by the way. Okay, I'm not good at the name thing. Okay, you have had a brilliant 34-year law enforcement career. Why do you want to now become chief of police?
Well, first of all, thank you, Chair DeRigo. Good morning. Vice Chair Patnode, good morning. And commissioners, thank you for being here and allowing this opportunity to be before you as a candidate for the Chief of Police from Maui County. It's interesting that you say brilliant career. I don't consider it a brilliant career. I think I've had ups and downs like most people. But with those ups and downs, you learn, you get better, and you hope that you see other officers and personnel in our department who have had those ups and downs grow as an officer, as a law enforcement person in this community. The reason why I feel like that I'm seeking this position is for those people in this department who serve our community, who live in this community, who have family in this community, who every day go out and try to make a difference, not only with their family and their friends, but the community as a whole, whether it be a resident, a longtime resident, a new resident, visitors. They're here to serve, and I'm here to help them serve, give them the necessary equipment, the tools to do their job to the best of their ability. So it's not about me, it's about them and the community. Thank you.
Candidate Pelletier?
Yes, sir.
You are currently a captain with Las Vegas PD and have had an outstanding career as a police manager. You obviously destined for higher positions with your manager and commander, as I would say as well. You are obviously destined for higher positions with your current department. Why do you want to leave Las Vegas PD and become the chief of Maui Police Department?
Chair Rego, Vice Chair Patno, Commissioner Moniz, Commissioner Tonkayo, Commissioner Rodriguez, Commissioner Mano, Commissioner Leach, Commissioner Kuwahara, Commissioner Rediker, County of Maui. It is with tremendous humility and honor that I'm here before you today. To be effective in that answer, I'd like to take it a little bit out of order, if I might. I, in my capacity on my department of LVMPD, I have achieved the highest rank I can on my own, and in order to be the head of agency, I have to run for elected office. As captains and bureau commanders, we are given the authority and the autonomy to run our bureaus as if we are heads of agency. And I have done so very well and with great honor. And I'm proud that I've been able to do that. I feel that an effective police leader must have command and knowledge in 4 areas: operations, investigations, administration, and community engagement. And I have all 4. I've run an area command that had just under 300 people in the highest, most visible, critical area in the state of Nevada, the Las Vegas Strip, that had over 43 million tourists annually. I deployed and ran the operations in that area command and reduced violent crime each of the 3 years which I was in command of it. Investigations. I deal with the most complex investigations in my current assignment, and I oversee investigations into international drug trafficking. I've overseen death investigations. I've overseen investigations that have required the most complex of tools and abilities in order to be effective and make sure that we reach justice. Administration. I have run and managed budgets for the past 8 years. I've had budgets as large as $25 million, and I've never gone over budget. Community engagement. I have built and established, led, facilitated, and been a part of tremendous community engagement programs, and I've seen the community transform. I want to be the chief of Maui PD because I know I have what it takes to come in here and make a difference. I understand tourist-based policing and community-based policing at the highest level. I understand that the citizens of Maui County deserve to have the best police service possible in order to move forward. And it's my job, my desire, my wish to come here and help take this agency, which is good, to make it great. I know in my heart that we can not just be a great agency, but we can be an agency that's the best practice model agency in the state of Hawaii and a best practice for the nation. And I will tell you this, the reason that matters the most is I have had the community pour out to me personally and breathe the aloha spirit. And to that end, my commitment to this community will be unresolving and dedicated. And I will do everything within my power and ability to make sure I give the community the department it deserves. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos, you have had a brilliant 33-year law enforcement career. Why do you now want to become chief of police?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, County of Maui. Congratulations to the other candidates for making this far. I care about this community. I love the people of this community. I love the people of our department. I think we do have a outstanding police department. We've come into a little bit of rut right now. But I think what I can bring to the table is the dedication that I've always had from day one. Yesterday, Captain Hirata had mentioned an incident that I'd forgotten about where I moved from Honolulu to Maui, and was fortunate enough to land in Olowalo Teen Challenge way back when. I didn't have a vehicle, so I rode my bike, and it wasn't a big deal because I was committed to learn this community, and there was no turning back. That same dedication that I had back then, back in 1988, September, I still carry the same dedication today. I know the talented people that we have, and I know that I can inspire them to continue to do a great job to serve this community. I think the bottom line comes down to this. I care about our people. I care about our community. Born and raised in Hawaii, very familiar with the Hawaiian culture. And I care about our people. I think looking back at my career and the places that I've been placed in difficult situations and thankfully I've been very successful. And so I've learned a lot of techniques along the way. I also know that the command staff, the majority thereof, has a lot of faith in my ability to lead this department into the future, to lead right now. I have never once forgotten what it's like to be a patrol officer. And I consider myself a patrol officer with just stars. So, based on my experience, my love for this community and for our people, I think I am your best candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go on to question 2. And we'll start with candidate Hudson. Okay. Police officers on all Hawaiian Islands are represented by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, or SHOPO. And non-sworn employees are represented by Hawaii Government Employees Association, HGEA. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations?
Let's take the unions first. The UPW deals with our fleets and a few other union positions. And then we have HGA, which is the working people within the department, the secretaries, the records personnel, some of the civilian traffic personnel. All of them deal with union contracts, so we have to stay within the union contract. But your question was more specific. How would I deal with them and the unions, or just the employees?
The unions. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations? So,
then I would deal with my employees first before I went to the unions. I would find out exactly what the employees needed to get their job done. See, my job as a manager is to remove obstacles so people that work the front line can do their jobs more effectively. It's my understanding that some of the records personnel do not receive pay commensurate their position, so I would be working on that straight away. When it comes to dealing with SHOPO, once again, it's a union. You have to have a decent working relationship with your officers to understand what the issues are. When we talk about morale, we cannot talk about morale for the higher up, for the hierarchy. You have to find out what the morale is for the boots on the ground. You have to talk specifically with the officers and the sergeants, the frontline individuals who actually go out there and deal with things. And then you can approach the union, because the only way you can deal with the unions is by being informed of what the issues are. Money is always an issue, but there's other issues that have to be taken into consideration. Equipment, vehicles have to be maintained, your radios have to be maintained, your firearms have to be maintained. The standard of conduct pay is given so that officers perform up to standards. So all of these things are considered when you go into negotiations. Then even after that, you have to think about what's coming down the pike, because you have to deal with retirements, because eventually people are going to retire, and what kind of damage does anybody do to the retirement system? And what I mean by damage is by over making their retirement account. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to have a nice, stable retirement account, but the community has to pay for this. So even though you're retired, the community is still paying for you. And so it's nice to have a good retirement, just don't take advantage of it. All of these things have to be considered. So narrowly and specifically, I'll answer your question. The answer to your question is know your people. Understand your people. Understand what their wants and their needs are. Know your community. What is its needs? Not just personal needs, but fiscal needs too, because we have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible. And then we can negotiate with the unions. When we negotiate with the unions, we have to negotiate in good faith. And what I mean by that is, it's not my way or the highway. It's let's talk this thing out. Let's make it happen for everybody's sake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Jacobzak? I said it right. Huh? Police officers on all Hawaiian Islands are represented by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, SHOPO, and non-sworn employees are represented by the Hawaii Government Employees Association. Okay? And as we just discovered, UPW is also involved in that. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations?
Okay, thank you for the question. First of all, the unions, be it SHOPO, UPW, or HGA, and the staff or executive staff, the department, all have the same goal in mind. Take care of the people who are doing a job each and every day. So we both have the same common goals. It's how do we get to that common ground. And with that, we have to open up. The dialogue has to be open. Our relationship with the unions have to be great, strong. And it's not just seeing them and talking to them in times of negotiation or discipline or, once in a quarter or once in a year relationship. It has to be ongoing. It has to be open. It has to be where we all have the same goals to take care of the people that are working for not only us, but and then I don't consider them working for us, they're working for the community. They're putting their heart and soul in serving those out there that are less fortunate or who need help, assistance from the police department. So in our relationship with the unions, we have to make sure they have the best equipment, the best tools, the best pay down the line. Okay, so how does that work? We work together cooperatively to come up with the best package for these employees so we can recruit better people, we can retain more officers, and with that, working together, we can accomplish a lot of what needs to be done to make sure our departments are working for the people and the communities. Thank you.
Candidate Pelletier. Police officers on all Hawaiian Islands are represented by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, SHOPO, and non-sworn employees are represented by Hawaii Government Employees Association, HGA, and the UPW. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations?
So effective communication is something that will make or break any organization. And I say that because it's paramount that the administration and that the unions have that effective communication. To that end, I've already spoken to my own current union that is working partners with SHOPO and said if I'm selected, I'd like to make sure I get an introduction to the leadership as soon as possible so that we can start establishing the common ground areas. We can all agree officer safety, training, equipment, those are all key areas. And if you can come to common ground areas, then you've got the ability to have building blocks and develop that relationship. Let's understand this, that collective bargaining is a right that people died for a long time ago to make sure that they had the quality in order to do their jobs and so that they were able to be safe when they worked. And I understand that the union worker is a good worker. I also understand that management and administration sometimes is at odds at that. And it's coming up with that proper balance of where do you need to go in order to accomplish that common goal. I know that cops that are supported, cops that are basically in a position where they feel that there's transparency internally, cops that feel that they can communicate, if they're happy cops, they're productive cops. If they're productive cops, you get a tremendous amount of energy and work and drive out of them. There will be effective communication in my administration with the unions and all the different partners that come with it. I have no problem saying no on certain things. I'm happily married. I've been happily married. I love my wife more than I love any person in the entire world. And occasionally I have to say no, and she tells me no. It doesn't mean I don't love her any less, but I say that because if I can say no to her, I can say no to them. And so I tell you that because the question said, how are you going to establish the communication? Well, I've already started to lay the groundwork. I will build on that groundwork. I will make it matter. I will make it important. I will make that relationship solid because together, the unions, the administration, the department, the community will make Maui better. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos. Police officers on all Hawaiian Islands are represented by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, SHOPO, and non-sworn employees are represented by the Hawaii Government Employees Association, HGA, and I believe it's United Public Workers, correct?
Correct.
UPW. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations?
Communication, absolutely communication. Constantly reaching out, being available. And there's always going to be issues of mistrust, and so you have to develop that relationship and with the SHOPO members and the leadership of SHOPO. And you have to spend time talking over issues that there's a disagreement on between the administration and SHOPO, because we all have the same goal in mind. And I think if we can sit down and spend time together and build that trust, it'll be easier for all the memberships, for all the unions. So it's having an open door policy and communication and agreeing to disagree, because that will happen. My answer.
Thank you very much. Okay. Candidate Ferreira. Police officers on all Hawaiian Islands are represented by the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers, SHOPO, and non-sworn employees are represented by the Hawaii Government Employees Association and the United HGA and United Public Workers, UPW. How would you build and maintain positive relationships with these labor organizations?
To start off first, I would have to really dissect the present contract and get the true meaning, because if you haven't sat on the negotiation table, you really don't know what is the true meaning to get into that article or whatever it is. So my first step is to really understand all the contracts and how it was developed. Then from there, like you guys mentioned, I've been in the department 42 years. I already have relationships. But when you go into negotiations, you deal with, I don't want to say adversaries, but everybody is trying to, we as administrators have a budget to run. We got to make sure we stay in that line. Yeah, we're looking out for the best for our men. So is the union. So we have to come to an understanding. And if there's disagreements, we have to be firm and stand for our platform, but still thinking of the betterment of everybody that's working for the department. The biggest thing to me is first understanding the present contract and talking to those that were involved in drafting that contract and knowing the true meaning, why they reached that point. And from there, we can move on. And I'll reach out to the officers, from the patrolmen to the executive staff, and get input from them too. How should we prepare and get prepared to sit on negotiation tables and come up with the best contract for everybody?
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to start with candidate Jacob Zach.
Oh, we're getting better
Yeah,
each time.
Twice. Twice. I got it twice now. How would you establish an organizational culture of professionalism within the Maui Police Department?
Establishing any type of culture comes from the top, comes from the chief of police on down. So if the chief has integrity, has ethics, values, and he establishes those and tells, lets the department know where he stands, that's the first step. Because if he's not ethical, why should anyone else be? How can he maintain or challenge the officers with any ethical decisions if he is not ethical? So the chief sets the tone of the department. And from there, his staff sets the tone, sets the ethics, sets the values, sets the core, sets the policies that transcend through the department into the community. So our officers are the ones going out there and making contact with the community. They have empathy for them. They have a service, a compassion. We have our core values. The core values have to stand for something. It has to not only be something you put on a board or a wall or a car or a sticker. It's something you live and you breathe and you believe in. And with that, it goes from the top on down throughout the department. So the leader of the department will show the way to the community, especially because we answer to the community. We answer to the public. And with that, when there's times of ethical issues, you have to take immediate action to rectify them and to discipline, if need be, those that are in violation of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, candidate Pelletier?
Pelletier.
Pelletier, there we go. How would you establish an organizational culture of professionalism within Maui Police Department?
It's a great question. I really do appreciate it. In the written product, we had to develop a strategic plan. And so I laid out in there exactly some of my ideas and some different thoughts on that. I can elaborate on that a little later in my answer. But what's critical is you put the right team and you build the right team together. I will promote based on two criteria: content of character and work ethic. Nothing else. And I will consider that first and foremost, because the leadership team, starting with myself, as well as the entire executive staff, has got to be above reproach on issues of integrity. They must understand that integrity, transparency, and accountability will be our values moving forward. I put guiding principles of honor and compassion because often in policing, compassion is so badly forgotten. And honor above all, because that defines our character. You have to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. With great power comes great responsibility. And I know that's a little cliche. I know there's some folks that are Star Wars fans or Marvel fans, but it was true in Spider-Man, and it's true now. And I say that with a little bit of levity because it's a big deal to be the chief of police. It's huge. All the eyes are on you because you are the law enforcement executive. And if you make a mistake or you screw up, you tarnish the accountability of the entire agency. So you have got to make sure that you are above reproach in what you do. The troops are looking at you. The community is looking at you. Your staff is looking at you. The commissioners are looking at you. The elected officials are looking at you. The other state agencies are looking at you. And so you've got to do that. But here's what I know. If your content of your character is strong, if you have a good moral compass, if you know who you are, I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm not here for any other reason than in my heart, I truly believe I've been called here and I can offer the change that is needed to move the direction forward. And I know what kind of man I am, and I know what it takes what it takes to be able to stand up for what the right thing is. And by doing that and having the agency see it, it will carry throughout. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos, how would you establish an organizational culture of professionalism within Maui Police Department?
That's a really good question. It really is a good question. And it does start at the chief, with the chief and his command staff. And it goes all the way down to the line supervisor. Everybody has to be on the same page on the expectations of service that the community deserves. And the number one goes to provide the best community service to the people of Maui. So, and there's a lot of things included in that. Right now with the manpower shortage, you have to look at manpower because we need more men out there to do the work that needs to be done. The public expects a particular quality of police work to be done, and we need to do that. I think training too, specific training that can build leadership. I think it's important for our organization to start building leadership at the very beginning of recruit school. Because essentially when you hit the road, you are a leader. You go out there, you solve crimes. People go to you for answers, and you have to provide those answers. If you can start at the recruit level and to the patrol level and continuously train sergeants, lieutenants with the same mindset, you have a reload of an attitude of excellence, an attitude of expectations for your people. And with that comes accountability to ensure that your commanders hold your people accountable in a fair way. In a fair way. Of course, it's not going to be popular all the time. But that's where it starts. And it all begins with how much do you care for this community? And making sure that everybody has that same mindset.
Thank you very much. Candidate Ferreira, how would you establish an organizational culture of professionalism within Maui Police Department?
When I first heard that question, first thing came into my mind is walk the talk. That's Captain Pelletier referred to. But is living up to the standards that are set, but also understanding the culture of the officers that are working for you and how to deal with each individual. Because nowadays, there are individuals, different upbringings, everything, but everyone is an individual. And they have different cultural backgrounds. So you have to understand where they're coming from. Sometimes they don't understand what the standards are. It's just a little miscommunication. And you don't want to pound it into them. You want them to absorb it. So my staff, first, it has to come from the top. Secondly, it filters down. My staff has to have the same understanding where I'm coming from and how are we going to develop the patrolman from down. But to me, you got to understand on the bottom, look at the bottom and work your way back up. But you are still the leader, and you have to show that.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson, how would you establish an organizational culture of professionalism within Maui Police Department?
The question is how. I think one of the questions that should be answered even before how is why. Why do we need a professional police department? Why is this important? Well, with a professional police department, you will gain the trust of the citizens by being professional yourselves. And you be professional, like Assistant Chief Ramos stated, through accountability. You got to have responsibility and accountability to affix to each and every officer that's there. But let's speak a little bit more about the development of the program. The development of the program comes from the top down. To me, there's no two ways about it. If the chief does not have integrity, why should anybody else? The command staff absolutely has to have integrity. The chief has to hold the command staff accountable. And as I mentioned before, being held accountable is not necessarily popular. When you hold the command staff accountable, then you hold the middle range staff, your lieutenants and your sergeants accountable also. And then it trickles down, and it's not beat to death on the officers. If they see everybody walking this line, toting this rope, then they'll do it too. As I mentioned earlier, I was hired at a very young age, and I got to see people actually doing this. And this is how I developed. So this is a long-term solution. This is not, we're going to go out tomorrow and everybody's going to be professional. It's not going to happen. This is going to take a while, and we have to understand that it's going to take a while. We're going to do this through training and education, absolutely. Ethics training. We're going to have to do it through critical incident stress management training, through peer support training, through different type of reports. But we're also going to have to engage the community because we could be trustworthy, but if the community doesn't trust us, that's a different story. And when the community does trust us, they're going to help us solve crimes. They're going to voluntarily comply with the law. It makes our job much easier, and things will be good. So how do we get community buy-in? Once again, we go back to the ice cream flavor of the month, transparency. But when we're talking about transparency, as I mentioned, it shouldn't be the ice cream flavor of the month. It really shouldn't. It should be like what we breathe. This is what we breathe. And we don't talk about breathing, except for when we can't. Okay, so we deal with transparency. And how do we deal with transparency then? Because we're all interrelated. We deal with transparency by getting the community involved. How do we get the community involved? The media is a good way. Love them or hate them, it's their job to go out and inform the public of what's going on. Okay, so you would have weekly meetings with the media. The police commission is another venue because you guys are people that serve within the community. So guarantee people come up to you and say, hey, what's going on? You should be able to respond to them. You should be able to tell them what is going on and how are we improving the department. So what the basic answer is, openness, accountability, responsibility, and follow through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to question 4. And we'll start with John Pelletier.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hawaii is unique with its diverse multicultural, multi-ethnic population and the fact that it used to be a sovereign kingdom. How would you go about building bridges to these different groups and address sensitive cultural, racial, or ethnic issues?
I'm really glad you asked that question. This is a painful and serious, important issue for this state. There are people alive whose grandparents were alive when the sovereign monarchy was overthrown and the Queen was betrayed. And I say that because that pain is real. Our diversity is our strength. Make no mistake about that. It truly is. I believe this, that every officer, when they take their oath, they swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Hawaii. And Article 12, Section 7 guarantees rights to Native Hawaiians. Everybody deserves equal protection under the law, especially when that law is written in the Constitution. If officers, if the community, if different aspects need training, great. Let's make sure that we provide it. Let's make sure we break those barriers down and we do, in fact, build bridges. I have led, managed protests, 6,000 people or more, and I'm not just throwing that out. That's a fact. And I understand that leadership is key in engaging people that might have gatherings or assemblies or protests or whatever the case may be. And there's nothing wrong. In fact, you need to ask, what do you guys need? What can we help you with? What are we missing the mark on? Don't be afraid to do a critical assessment of yourself and ask what's going right, what's going wrong, and how can we get better? And talk. And guess what? You will break those barriers down. And it may take an incredibly long time, and it may be a struggle. And we all know I'm the outsider, so it might even be more of a challenge. But I promise you this, I will have the passion and drive in order to do that. And I tell you that I understand that this is a scar on the face of Hawaii to some. And scars sometimes open up and go deeper. And sometimes scars may fade a little bit. But I know it's there. And I'll tell you this, when I raise my hand and I swear my oath as the chief of police, it will be to protect all the people in Hawaii and make sure that everybody feels that they have equal protection under the law. So help me God.
Candidate Ramos, Hawaii is unique with its diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic population and the fact that it used to be a sovereign kingdom. How would you go about building bridges to these different groups and address sensitive cultural, racial, or ethnic issues?
I'm the multiple culture sitting in front of you. I have Hawaiian blood, Filipino blood. I have, you name it, every nation in my family. I do have those relationships right now. I've been part of an organization called the Halimua since 2001, a group of Hawaiian men, professionals, not professionals, that meet, that train together with the idea of making the Hawaiian man a better man, a productive Hawaiian male, and raising your children to be productive, contributing Hawaiian people. At the recent protest back in 2015, a lot of the members there were good friends of mine. They understood that we had a job to do if we did it fairly, and that was our mission, to do it fairly. And we could wave at a distance, but we know that we were on opposite sides. But we could do it in a matter of respect. And it gets tough. It gets really rough at times. But I already have those relationships, and I will continue with those relationships. And I think it comes back to communication. Communication and developing trust.
Candidate Ferreira, Hawaii is unique with its diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic population and the fact that it used to be a sovereign kingdom. How would you go about building bridges to these different groups and address sensitive cultural, racial, or ethnic issues?
That's a very good question. First, you have to be able to listen. I mean, just listening and not interrupting anybody when they're trying to get their point of view across. Because I came from a family that stood up for their rights one time back in the middle 70s. And that had to do with the building of the hotel in McKenna. So I understand what culture is. But as an officer that took the oath to uphold the law, I will do the job that I was assigned to do. But we will be having that talks with the different entities involved in historical or even racism. I grew up in a community where everybody was mixed. And back then, we didn't know what racism was. So name calling to us was a joke. But as you get older and more influences have come into the islands, you learn how to listen, and then you can understand why some people are upset. And then you learn how to react, or, you're not siding with them if they're wrong in your opinion, but you're trying to build up that understanding why they're that way. The biggest thing is listening, knowing the culture, but you still have a job you have to do, which I know I've done. That's all.
Candidate Hudson, Hawaii is unique with its diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic population and the fact that it used to be a sovereign kingdom. How would you go about building bridges to these different groups and address sensitive cultural, racial, or ethnic issues?
That's a very interesting question. My grandmother came over on the boat from the Azores. She's pure Portuguese. I'm half Portuguese. All of my children are Hawaiian, Japanese, Portuguese, and Caucasian. So this state is truly multicultural. In addition to that, there's no one ethnicity that has more than 50% of the population. So in theory, we're all minorities. And as you look around the room, you can see many of us can trace our roots back to plantation days. We have strong ties and bonds to that. Okay, so what I'm getting at is we have to understand diversity. And how do you understand it? Okay, we could take a history class, like, for instance, Hawaiian history. Kamehameha II, also known as Liho Liho, abolished the taboo system in the late 1800s. Overnight, within a few weeks, all of your temples were destroyed, your idols were gone, and the priesthood was abolished. He heard about a Christianity, and so that's one thing. Then you have the plantation days where people come over and you have people buying up land that locals have a hard time getting. So you have to understand where the frustration is coming from. Okay, these are things that have to be taught sometimes. You actually have to spend time and go and learn these things. So what I'm saying is that in order to truly teach diversity, first is you have to show them what it is, teach them what it is, and then have them interact so that they understand what it is. I'll never forget the first time I was assigned to a case, and real quick, and I think I got a few seconds left. It was at Kalama Park, and it was in the early 80s, and it was a Polynesian group having loud music, and there was complaints to go over there and turn down the music, and I walked over there, and I walked right across the top of Matt to the biggest chief that was there, and I said, hey, you got to turn this down. And my B partner, when I got back, he just ripped me apart because I wasn't sensitive. So a lot of times you can teach people to be sensitive, but you actually have to show them how to be sensitive. So it comes from training, and it comes from understanding. And understanding comes from studying and knowing the history. What are the sources of the frustration? And there's a lot of frustration. We cannot say that Hawaii is without racism, because that would be a lie. That's a fallacy. We joke about it way better than everybody else does, but I wonder, and this is my own opinion, do we joke about it because nobody is in the majority? Is that why we're tolerant of it? Maybe, perhaps, but it's a unique situation to Hawaii, and for that, I'm really happy. Last item of note on this. When we have get-togethers with my family, we have Filipinos, we have Portuguese, we have Japanese, and the food there is absolutely outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jacobzak. Hawaii is unique with its diverse, multicultural, multi-ethnic population, and the fact that it used to be a sovereign kingdom. How would you go about building bridges to these different groups and address sensitive cultural, racial, or ethnic issues?
Thank you for that question. I think so far the questions we've addressed, I think this is the most important one that we've come to. This island nation was the Hawaiians. And when the foreigners came in, they tried and successfully, in most parts, added to that culture. If you go further down, recent history, it's more like trying to change that culture. Now, when I grew up here, and I've grown up here most of my life, as was said earlier, in the plantation days, Punane, my family grew up there, and everyone got together. It was a community. And the doors are open. You can just walk in and say, hi, auntie, hi, uncle. You're not related to everyone, but you relate to everyone. So with that, recently, I noticed there's a renaissance of local younger local, mostly, people who are recognizing their history as a people, of Hawaiian people, of this nation, of this islands. And there are rights that have been basically taken away. I know families who have been on Hawaiian homelands property for years, and some have passed, which is terrible. It's never should happen that way. They should all be afforded an opportunity to have a piece of land here in their own islands. So going back now to what policing, I have a lot of people I know. My family obviously is part Hawaiian. My father-in-law was a member of the Royal Order of Kamehameha. So I had a deep root in the Hawaiian culture of how to behave, of how to act, how to revere your elders. And that's a culture that slowly has been leaving us. It's not being brought down from generation to generation. There's a stopgap someplace, or a miscommunication, if you would. I've already reached out recently and proposed having a cultural diversity or Hawaiian culture classes for our recruit class, at least a day, maybe more, but for now it's a day, so that people not from here, who have no idea what being raised in Hawaii is about, understand this is what the Hawaiian people are. This is what the Hawaiian culture is. It's not, it's a way of life. It's so unique than any other place in the nation. This is why they call Hawaii, the jewel of the Pacific, because it's the people. And so with that, I propose to offer it to the recruits who are coming in, but also for the local people who here, and I'm talking about the local police officers who may not have had that education into the Hawaiian community. So as a recall, once a year, a refresher, this is what the Hawaiian community is about. This are some changes that have occurred. So with that, we look forward to educating our officers to understand what it is to service the Hawaiian community, the Hawaiian people, because this is their land as much as anybody else's. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with candidate Ramos. You're smiling, so you were expecting it, right? You got the method behind my madness. My police department has a current budget of $63 million and change. That's big. 79.5% of this budget is encumbered by fixed collective bargaining personnel costs, and an additional 12.8% of the annual budget is expended on overtime. Describe your experience in managing overtime and what actions you would take as chief to control Maui Police Department's overtime expenditures.
Good question. It starts with manpower, making sure that you have enough men out there to cover the beats. And it's very important that the person that's in charge of the scheduling understands the scheduling, so you can minimize overtime. I think when the rules of overtime and callbacks are enforced fairly across all the districts, you can get a hold of the overtime. Without the manpower, it's going to be a challenge. But you have to allow your commanders the freedom to look at scheduling possibilities, schedule changes that can provide, so that the districts can provide the coverage needed for patrol to respond to the calls of service. And that's really important. And also you need to analyze the kind of overtime that's being spent, to look to see if we're actually getting our money's worth. What are we doing? What kind of work is being done? It's it's a challenge. It's absolutely a challenge. But what makes that challenge harder is the fact that we have not enough manpower to man the beats.
Thank you very much. On to candidate Ferreira. MPD has a current budget of $63 million. 79.5% of this budget is encumbered by fixed collective bargaining personnel costs. An additional 12.8% of the annual budget is expended on overtime. Describe your experience in managing overtime and what actions you would take as chief to control Maui Police Department's overtime expenditure.
As Assistant Chief Vic Ramos already stated, we are, to me, beyond that point of controlling overtime. Presently, Wailuku District, which I command, we're supposed to have 3 watches. Right now, we're down to 2 watches. And we adjusted the 9-5 schedule to a 12-hour shift where officers are automatically getting 3.5 hours of overtime. And it's because there's not enough manpower to go around. We try to make adjustments. You know, there's callbacks, order backs. People are held over. But then that creates another issue because the health and the welfare of the officers come first. So many of them start calling in sick. So we have expanded and reached out to the other divisions and bureaus for officers that want to come and assist voluntarily to help the Uniform Services Bureau. But everybody's suffering within our police department. Every bureau has a shortage. You know, for Wailuku District, I say we're about middle 70 percentile with officers. But because of long hours and right now it's hard to just control. That's all I can say. You know, without enough manning, it's not going to be solved right off the bat. You know, you can be creative as much as you can be, but then you're hurting the other divisions too. If they start volunteering more and neglect their work, that's just what we're doing. So at this point, until we can get manning back up to a comfortable level, we'll be in this dilemma.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson. Maui Police Department has a current budget of $63 million. 79.5% of this budget is encumbered by fixed collective bargaining personnel costs. An additional 12.8% of the annual budget is expended on overtime. Describe your experience in managing overtime and what actions you would take as chief to control Maui Police Department's overtime expenditures.
Thank you for the question. It is correct. Overtime is directly correlated to available manpower. There's no two ways about that. But there's, as you mentioned, a different type of overtime. Some overtime we know is coming. You're going to have holiday pay, so that's overtime. You know that people have days off and their holidays and certain sick leave, so you can account for so much overtime pay. Okay, but more importantly, how would we control it then for the ones that got to be called back or the schedules that are extended? One of the first things I would do, and it would not be popular, is I would do an outside audit. And the audit would engage what are our procedures, where are we spending the money? Are we have people holding over to approve reports when it could be approved by somebody else? Why is this person working so much overtime? Because you see, the thing about the people working overtime, it goes into the retirement fund, and I mentioned this before, and we're going to have to pay for this. The community will always have to pay for this. So it's incumbent upon us to be fiscally responsible now. But while it's not a popular position for me to take, the overtime has to be managed, even if it means developing flying squads. That's where you take officers out from different sections. You're a flying squad. We're short here. Off you go. That's where you're going to be assigned for a while. We're going to have to pay other type of things like transfers and stuff like that. But there's going to have to be something imaginative, something outside of the box that probably won't initially be popular. But we would start with an audit first. An audit would actually hold everybody accountable because it would find loose ends and it would tie them up. But that would not be a popular decision. The true answer is like what they mentioned before. Hire enough officers. That being left behind, then we have to take alternative measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Jacobzak, Maui Police Department has a current budget of $63 million. 79.5% of this budget is encumbered by fixed collective bargaining personnel costs. The additional 12.8% of the annual budget is expended on overtime. Describe your experience in managing overtime and what actions you would take as chief to control Maui Police Department's overtime expenditure.
Thank you for that question. First of all, let's address the initial issue of the negotiated pay and overtime. So basically, with the budget, the negotiations with the unions and the state and the 4 counties are handled statewide, and it's negotiated, and you come up with the amount. So that's what you have going into your budget. Now, specifically for the overtime, yes, as was mentioned, manpower is a big thing. So, and some of the things we have done was mentioned by both Mr. Ferreira and Mr. Hudson was they've called backs, they've had other personnel from other divisions and bureaus help out with callbacks and holdovers. Beyond that, that's what we're doing now. Beyond that, we have to really ramp up recruitment. That's how you fill the vacancies. You have to recruit. Another thing we have to do is priority. We have to set the priority. What is the priority? Now, the patrol officer on the road, in the car, going to cases and responding to the citizens and community, that should be the priority. But a lot of times, and this is not just right now, it's previous history in the department, is we're promoting people, which is fine, or we're transferring people to positions and filling those specialized positions, and yet keeping patrol short. Why is that? Why can't we prioritize patrol? That's our office. That's our backbone. It's always been told since the first day I got in the police department. The backbone of the Maui Police Department, or the police department, is patrol. Well, we got to start acting like it. We got to start prioritizing. We got to start proving that, and that's by keeping a more percentage of officers in those positions before we fill out the specialized areas. Specialized areas, they're very important. Don't get me wrong. I was in specialized. I was a detective for many years, and they're very needed. But the overtime mostly came from patrol. That's where all your shortages are. That's where most of your majority of your overtime comes from. We have to prioritize patrol to address the overtime needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Pelletier. Maui Police Department has a current budget of $63 million. 79.5% of this budget is encumbered by fixed collective bargaining personnel costs. The additional 12.8% of the annual budget is expended on overtime. Describe your experience in managing overtime and what actions you would take as chief to control Maui Police Department's overtime expenditure.
It's a great question. Like I said earlier, I have over 8 years of experience directly over budgets, to include over $25 million budgets. I say that because my area of responsibility, my AOR, if you looked at the annual report in 2019 for Maui PD, which I believe is the last one, and you looked at the same numbers 2019 for the area that I had, your call for service volume that you had here was 98,000. I had 80,000. The arrests you had was 899. I had 1,114. I say it because I'm very familiar with the magnitude and the size of what we're dealing with. I've had experience dealing with budgets both from locals as well as from the federal oversights and the task force that I had. It's imperative that people understand You are the steward of the public's money. You are spending the public's money. You spend it like it's your own, and you do everything you can to make sure that that money is protected. And you come up with whatever programs you have to for cost-saving measures, because with the numbers we're talking about is 90+% is that. So facilities we're suffering, training we're suffering, supplies, logistics, right? And so we have those issues. So I propose doing what's right, not what's popular. We'll do a staffing review. Vice Chair, I heard you a couple months ago talking about when they had the budget proposal and you asked for upcountry officers. And it was very concerning, the fact that we might have 45 minutes away until we can get another person coming. And I understand that's in District 1. But why, it makes no sense to me, are we not rotating some assignments to make sure that we have minimum staffing that's adequate so we don't have to have 12-hour shifts? And I don't understand for the life of me how a lieutenant and a captain is sitting there making overtime pay. That stuff should go to officers and maybe supervisors. I would propose a corporal program so that we could minimize having to do some formal promotions possibly, but that also does succession planning. It builds to the future. We've got people that are PO3 categories, so why not take those, give them the full supervisor class, set them up for success, make that ability the best practice for the promotion exam. And now what we did, we just energized a whole group of folks. We just put a formalized supervisor on a scene that can do a use of force investigation, that could be the senior officer there. We've reduced the budget because I'm not going to let the brass go and rob the coffers of the county. I'm going to do everything to make sure that we build a robust recruiting section. We have to rebrand. I've been here 6 days. Every single day when I go and I talk to somebody and I say, oh, I'm here for a job interview. Every day they say, what job? I say the police chief. Every single person, to include the rank and file, has told me this place is corrupt, this place is not good, this place has issues, or however word you want to say it. I'm just telling you that because that's the core group that we have to recruit from. So if they believe that, real or perceived means it's real. And if they believe that, then we're going to have to do something to get folks in the seats to do the job. We're down 21%. Cut off 21% of your body. Tell me how effective you are. That's significant. But I believe with fiscal responsibility, some very good approaches, doing the right thing with the public dollars, making some decisions that may not be the most popular decisions, I believe, and I know because I've done it, we can do the right thing to get that budget reduced as far as the overtime expenditures and get programs where they need to go. Patrol is the most important function of the police department. When you call 911, you need an officer now, not 40 minutes later, not that they can't come. You need one now, and we have to have that filled first. Once that's filled, we can start looking at the other things. There's no reason, and you could say, well, you just don't know the culture. I understand that we've got detectives that do certain investigations. If the district attorney is not going to do prosecutions on those investigations, we don't need those bodies that way. We can use them in other places. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think we should take a break now. And so it's now 9:56. We could take a 10-minute break and come back at 6 after the hour. Okay, 10:06. So this meeting is recessed for 10 minutes. Okay, I call this meeting of the Maui Police Special Meeting to order from recess. 10:11. So we're going back around and starting with what is your definition of community? How would you implement?
Presently, we have a community policing officer section, and that is officers reaching out to the public and addressing any issues that arises within their sector that they're assigned to. It's been implemented. It's been with us several years. Lately, they've been working over, not overtime, but there have been increasing calls for service, and that helps the beat man from responding to calls that the community police officers can address. And, they attend community meetings. Now it's through Blue Jeans. Any work-related projects coming up with other county divisions or private sectors, they'll do all the review for that in the sector they work in for that community, and send it back up the chain to see what happens. They're tasked with a lot of things, which alleviates patrol from responding. Let's put it that way. But right now, very functional. They're short-staffed too, but we have the other two districts, Lahaina and Akain, at certain times. We utilize all community police officers for a big project. So we have it in place already, and it's operating at its maximum.
Very much. Candidate Hudson, what is your definition of community policing, and how would you implement this program?
We would have to go back to Sir Robert Peel when he said that policing is everybody's business, not just the police officers. Policing is a community business. Police officers are merely people who are paid full-time to do policing. In other words, the entire community is responsible for policing, not just the police. And this is with community policing, by having police directly interact with the community, not just on calls for service, but actually go there and sit down and talk to the people and find out what's going on in their community. This creates a community awareness, and they're quicker to react back with police officers. Okay, so it's the interaction that really works with community policing. Our community policing started way back when in Pai'atown, I think. Officer Tony Peressa was the first officer that was assigned community policing, and that was quite some years ago. And at first it was like, I'm not really sure. But as he made his way around town, people began to build a trust and a bond with him. And then the next thing you know, everybody wants community policing. So in direct answer to your question, how would I implement it? Well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. The community policing, the program that we have now, is very good. As Captain Everett Ferrer said, it works. I'm a proponent of it. I would expand it in time based upon manpower needs, based upon budgetary concerns and stuff like that. It's not that we can just put community police officers everywhere. If we could, that would solve a lot of our problems. You find that with the community police, the problems within the community are addressed in a quicker way. Environmental concerns, the broken window. With community police officers, you have people go and address the broken window syndrome. If you have a broken window and nobody fixes it, then it manifests itself in other things. The things start deteriorating. Next thing you got cars parked over there, and community police can address this issue. So if your question is how to implement it, I say we have a very good implemented program now. Does it mean it's perfect? No, absolutely. I have yet to find a perfect program. What would I do with it? I'd reevaluate it, make sure we haven't lost track of our mission, make sure that we involve the community, help us with policing, help us help them, because we can't do it by ourselves. So my direct answer is we have a very good program. Everett Ferrer is right. I would look at it, see if we could tweak it, see if we could make it better. But I'm a proponent of it, and I would stick with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Jacobczak, what is your definition of community policing, and how would you implement this program?
Yeah, again, two-part question. So I'll start off with the definition. The definition of community policing is in community policing. It's the community and policing. And with that it's a co-response to the issues and concerns of the community, wherever it be. So like it was mentioned, we do have community police officers. They go out to the community, they address concerns and issues that do arise from concerned citizens, and they try to find a solution to the problem. And it's not always going to be a law enforcement solution. It's going to be a solution brokered together by community and police. What is the best way to solve that problem in that community? As far as implementing, we, as mentioned before, we have community police officers in various towns throughout Maui. Okay, and each district is a little different, a little unique because of that particular district. As an example, Hana, we don't have a community police officer, but all the officers in that district serve a community policing purpose. They have a little area where they reach out to the community and find out what are your issues, and this is done monthly. So they report back monthly. I've talked to so-and-so in this community. This is what an issue is, what a concern is. This is what I can do to help. It may result in calling out another department, another agency to help assist in that matter, in that problem, but they're going to find a solution. It's going to be together. It's not going to be police said this, MPD did this. No, it has to be the community and the police get together to solve the problem. And I would say this, although we do have officers assigned as community police officers, that's their assignment, every officer, regardless if they're patrol, in specialized units, even in our civilian staff, they are technically community officers. They're helping to serve the community. So whatever problem or issue they have, they should be able to address it. And that's why we cannot just say, officers, if somebody has a problem, an issue, they want to talk to you, don't just drive by or say, I'll send a community police officer. Take some time. Talk to the person. What's the issue? If you can't help them there, find a solution. Find someone who can. And that way, the community is served better by the whole department and not just a few. Thank you.
Candidate Pelletier, what is your definition of community policing and how would you implement this program?
My definition of community policing is the police and the community working together to co-produce public safety. I would build a robust community engagement program that would make sure that we did what President Obama and his 21st Century Task Force mandated about policing, which is one of the 6 pillars, build trust and legitimacy. 2, the third pillar is community policing and public safety. So you need to do that in order to be compliant with what the president mandated. My robust program would be, 1, we reform the community relations section to the Office of Community Engagement. It would direct report to me. It is that important. Communities that do not have concrete engagement teams often show lack of trust within the community. 2, I will create the MMAC, which is the Maui PD Multicultural Advisory Council. I will have a cross-section of members from the community that will meet with me monthly to talk about their issues. For the duration of the time, let's just say it's 60 minutes. I'm going to keep my mouth quiet and my ears open, and I'm going to do everything I can to listen to each of them. Of course, commenting at the very end, but I will do that monthly. I will make sure that the islands of Lanai and Molokai are represented in that, and I will go to those other islands because we are going to create First Tuesday here. Every one of the district commanders will have a monthly gathering on the first Tuesday of the month, and it will have the community that can come in and listen and voice their concerns. I will make it a point to travel and rotate around to each one of those. We will do faith-based policing here. It's a concept that's been going on for the last 25, 30 years. There's a concept called RECAP, Rebuilding Every City Around Peace. Why do we not have folks, let's just say pastors and those in faith, helping to broker relationships to where individuals might be in need of? There are so many resources we have available that we do not use. We need to make sure that we have everybody included, everybody involved in it. Sir Robert Peel did say 200 years ago that the public are the police and the police are the public, and what he meant also was that we derive our legitimacy from the police. I have built incredibly robust community relation projects. One of them is documented in a film called Vegas Vikings, but it was a top 10 finalist for the International Association of Chief of Police on community engagement programs. I say it because I know and understand what it takes to transform neighborhoods. We took a neighborhood, it was the most crime-ridden neighborhood in the most violent part of the particular area, and we reduced it to 0 violent calls for service within a year. It takes a tremendous amount of work, but it can be done. You have to believe in it. What is possible? We all have the same dreams. We all breathe the same air. We're all in this fight together. The community wants us to succeed. We want to do the best job for them. And I'll even take it one step further. King Kamehameha, after writing the law of the splinter paddle, the way I understand it, was asked, why did you give mercy to the man that hit you with the oar? And the king said, those in authority must show legitimacy to those they govern. That was 240 years ago, and that is the definition of community policing and police legitimacy if I have ever heard it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ramos, what is your definition of community policing, and how would you implement this program?
My definition of community policing is a relationship between the police and the community. It's someone that's planted within a district or within a location, maybe Market Street, Front Street, where the people and the businesses see the officer every day to develop that sense of trust. We have a very good CPO unit right now, but we don't have enough manpower to initiate that. But in my 5-year plan, I'd actually would like to start something like that. A foot patrol, but not with rookies. Maybe a seasoned officers who can speak to the business community, can speak to the people in the area. When you walk down Market Street, I had to pay a bill. And when I went into this one particular shop, I noticed the shopkeeper had a large dog within. And I thought, whoa, this is a beautiful, huge Rottweiler. And then he had mentioned to me that because of the clientele in the area, that's the kind of issues we got to deal with. That's the kind of issues we can deal with right now, to have the officer there present, talking every day with community members and business people. That's how I would implement community policing, and that's my definition.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll start with candidate Hudson. Some employees of Maui Police Department feel that there are 2 groups within the department, those who are in and those who are out. The out group feels that the in group receives prime consideration for training, special assignments, promotions, and that they have management's ear. The out group feels that if they are critical of management or supervision, they are unfairly disciplined, and their input into departmental operations is not wanted. What has been your experience of in and out groups within your department, and what have you done to remedy the situation?
I think the term in and out groups is interesting. When I was in the department, we referred to them as cliques. Okay, you have a clique doing this and a clique doing that, and if you're affiliated with one clique and they're in a better position than yours, then they will take advantage of that position, and so on and so forth. So the first thing I would say is, have cliques existed? The answer is yes. I don't think they're unique to our police department. I don't think they're unique to our profession. I don't think they're unique to pretty much anything. I think wherever you work, there's going to be cliques and bonds. And this goes back to high school days. There were cliques in high school. And it continues pretty much throughout your entire life, unless you're like in a family business when that is the clique. So let's get more specific then. What about me? Well, I retired 8 years ago. There's nobody left in my clique. Either they've retired or they passed away, unfortunately. So let's address that and put that off to the side. So how would I address cliques? I would come in fresh. My deputy would not be a current sitting police officer from within the department. It's coming from without, not from within. And when it starts from the top down and it spreads down, it's going to happen that there are no cliques. And if we find that there are cliques, then we get back to one of the earlier questions regarding responsibility and accountability. The responsibility will be squarely affixed on who did this, and they will be held accountable. It sounds authoritarian, it sounds brutal, but we have to control cliques, lest they take over the entire department. And then you have people on the outside. Why is this important then? Well, it's important so that the people don't feel that they're downtrodden, so that the people don't feel like second-class citizens, so that even if you're friends with Lieutenant Jones and Jones hates the chief, just because your friendship is there doesn't mean you're going to be ixnayed on moving up. You'll still have your fair share to move up. You should be promoted based on ability, based on your integrity, and based on your ability. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. But when it comes to cliques, personally, I have no tolerance. And rest assured, I have no clique, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Jacobzak? Some of the employees of MPD feel that there are two groups within the department, those who are in and those who are out. The out group feels that the in group receives prime consideration for training, special assignments, promotions, and that they have management's ear. The out group feels that if they are critical of management or supervision, they are unfairly disciplined and their input into departmental operations is not wanted. What has been your experience of in and out groups within your department, and what have you done to remedy the situation?
Thank you for that question. My experience, and I can say this from, I guess, early on, is I kind of felt like I was in the out group. And that was my perception. I'm not sure if that was the reality. A lot of times you take what you perceive to be happening and you listen to others who probably don't have your best interests at hand, who try and sway you to believe that there is something against you, or you're on the outs with management or supervisor or what have you. But the reality is that there is that certain in and out culture. And like Mr. Hudson said, it's not unique to the Maui Police Department. It's not unique to the state. It's not unique to law enforcement. It's not unique to society. It happens when, like he said, you grow up with your tight friends and you're going to do things together. Now, when an outsider comes, he seemed like someone, or I don't know if he's like a threat or what have you to get into your circle, but at that point in time, you feel like you're an outsider. Now, how I have addressed this issue is, especially as my tenure as the Assistant Chief in Uniform Services Bureau, when training has come up, and I noticed that it's maybe somebody from Wailuku or Lahaina or Kihei, I always add someone from Molokai or Lanai or Hana, because we need to train all officers in all districts. It's imperative that we have people highly trained in all districts, in all communities, not just the main island. Because a lot of people forget that, Maui Police Department incorporates three other islands, two other inhabitable islands, and we need to train those personnel for that community to make sure that they're included in our highly trained profession. Communication is the key. If people feel out, and this is going to happen more in specific either specialized units or in patrol districts with that group, the commander, the supervisors, the executive staff, administration needs to communicate what we're feeling. What instead of listening to rumors, communicate what's going on. Here is our direction. Here is our vision. This is how you eliminate or at least address cliques by be inclusive of everyone, regardless of who they know, who they work with. It has to be everyone involved in the decision-making and in training. Everybody get trained, not just one certain unit or one certain group. So that's how you would address the division. And that's what it is, a division. It's not, it's an in-out group, it's a division of the department. We have to bring it back together, and you do that through communication, open dialogue, and problem solving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Candidate Pelletier? Some employees of Maui Police Department feel that there are two groups within the department, those who are in and those who are out. The out group feels that the in group receives prime consideration for training, special assignments, promotions, and that they have management's ear. The out group feels that if they are critical of management or supervision, they are unfairly disciplined and their input into departmental operations is not wanted. What has been your experience of in and out groups within your department, and what have you done to remedy the situation?
It's great questions, team building question. It's also a leadership question. I believe that I get to come in here and reboot the entire department, and this in versus out, what a great opportunity for us to get everybody on the same page. One of the things I'm going to do when I spoke to the 4 officers the other day, I sat down with them and I said, hey, let me introduce myself to you and let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to every single section, bureau, division, assignment. I'm going to ask 3 questions. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how can we improve? I'm going to let them know. Here's how you're going to get promoted. Content of character and work ethic. Second part of your question is, what's my experience? I've had a tremendous amount of experience, and I got a hold of a lot of great assignments. And I know that the community didn't get to see my resume and different things, but I've ran the K-9 section. I've ran the SWAT section. I've been a detective sergeant in the gang unit. I've been in internal affairs. I've been an instructor in the academy. I say that because I will never ask an officer to do a job I am not willing to do myself. I say that because it's important, because if cops know that you are coming from a position of knowledge and ability and you mean that, they're going to work harder for you. Team building, it's 4 steps to team building and figuring this out. 1, identify the division. Have the conversation. Find out why it's not working. 2, you want to make sure that you re-engage priorities and goals. 3, build on wins. So that out group, praise them. Just a little bit, however that needs to be done. 4, acknowledge the problem. And when you acknowledge the problem, empathize, listen, understand, sympathize. You do that, you've got the ability to move it forward. As the SWAT commander, the team I had was red versus blue. We had 39 employees responded to. I oversaw 57 hostage barricade type of critical events. After every event, and it didn't matter what your rank is, you talk about what went right, what went wrong, and how can we do better. There's nothing wrong with doing an assessment of where you are. You can be respectful of the chain of command, you can follow orders, you can do different things, but don't we want to know if we're about to do something catastrophic? If there is a colossal failure and a troop below knows it, don't we want an open environment where that troop can go to this boss and say, there's an issue, you need to know about this right now? We expect and demand that. I fully believe in our use of force policy. I know it's called rules of resistance here. Their needs must be, has to have duty to intervene placed in there. And if you have your partners back at 3 o'clock in the morning in a back alleyway off of Front Street, making sure that you guys are going home each night, well, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when your partner is about to do something totally inappropriate in 2021, you need to back them off and say, knock it off. That's duty to intervene. That's having those conversations. I know how to lead. I know how to inspire. I have been there. I have done it. I have built teams. I have rallied people together. I know I can do that here. I know I can make the in and the out one department for one Maui, for one Hawaii. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos. Some employees of Maui Police Department feel there are two groups within the department, those who are in and those who are out. The out group feels that the in group receives prime consideration for training, special assignments, promotions, and that they have management's ear. The out group feels that if they are critical of management or supervision, they are unfairly disciplined and they're put into departmental operations, and their input into departmental operations is not wanted. What has been your experience of in and out groups within your department, and what have you done to remedy the situation?
Thank you. There's only so much training that's offered, especially at the patrol level. There's a lot of training offered at the investigative services level. And the responsibility to make sure that there's fair training being spread out amongst the manpower comes from, the bottom line is from the assistant chief to the commanders. And it really is based upon the merit of the officer, whether or not he's performing his duties. And all that is assessed before the training is even offered to that particular officer. There are times, though, when training has come upon my desk, and all of us, we've seen that this officer has already gone to a recent training. It really is our responsibility to make sure that it is given to somebody else that has the merit to go. I mean, it does stop at the ACs. When it comes to the promotional system, it's unfortunate that some officers feel that way. And I understand it's disappointing not getting promoted. I've been there myself. But our promotional system is proven. And when people have challenged that system, I mean, we've been victorious because we are fair in our selection of somebody being promoted. It is by merit. It is by ability. Because someone feels that he needs to be promoted, or she, and has no history of leadership, I mean, that all comes into play. And part of that is the evaluation process. But when it comes to training, because there are so few in patrol, I believe the ultimate responsibility is the commander and the assistant chief to make sure that it's spread amongst the men fairly. And I think the captains and the commanders do have the freedom in all our divisions to look for training, and the men actually have the freedom too, and they've done it. Research particular training that relates to their area of expertise. And if they can justify it, it makes the commander's job easier to justify it. It makes the AC's job easier to justify it. And if we get it into the mayor's office in time, we might be able to persuade him. There was one situation that I recall where I went to visit a particular division, and I was hearing grumblings that they were asking for training and they weren't hearing back. Well, turns out I never got the information. I never got the to from request. So that was something that I would not have known had I not met with the men. So I think it's very important to meet with the men to see where the miscommunication is. If it's administration, if it's on the men's side, to clarify that, to clear the air. Because if you have worked hard and have earned the privilege to go to training, you should go. Absolutely.
Candidate Ferreira, some employees of Maui Police Department feel there are two groups within the department, those who are in and those who are out. The out group feels that the in group receives prime consideration for training, special assignments, promotions, and that they have management's ear. The out group feels that if they are critical of management or supervision, they are unfairly disciplined, and their input into departmental operations is not wanted. What has been your experience of in and out groups within your department, and what have you done to remedy the situation?
In and out groups. A lot of the groups are bonded because they are classmates from recruit school. And they always stay until the end, be together. If there's an issue within my command, I would sit everybody down and have a conversation and find out what is the real issue. In order to make corrections or adjustments, you have to know what is the issue. Now, some of the issues are warranted concerns, but many are because some people can't handle how to take orders, and they challenge the command. That's been done. And when I see that, I'll take action, sometimes unpopular, but there's a fine line. There's a fine line that I understand between harassment and having officers perform their duties as they're supposed to. Okay? For training, I'll send somebody training based on the evaluation and their passion for whatever. Take, for example, he's a traffic man. He's out there making DUI arrests, citing people, that's his passion, that's his goal. He puts in for it. I'll look at all the candidates. But if he's producing in this area more than these guys who just wants to go to class for a break, I'll pick him over everybody else. So it comes down to evaluation and performance on the job that would dictate who I send up the chain. I don't have the final say, but that's how I look at things. And those that, if it's a training that encompasses bigger group, yeah, we'll send more. But then when you see those that come back and don't perform to your expectations, would I send them to another similar training? I don't think so. They have to gain that if it's sent.
Thank you very much. Okay. We'll start. Yes. You already guessed this. I'm checking my crib sheet here. Trying to keep everything together here. Okay. Candidate Jacobzak. The following is purely hypothetical.
Okay.
Shortly after becoming chief, you discover there's a long-standing, unwritten Maui Police Department policy that extends special courtesy to off-duty police officers, elected officials, and family members of Maui Police Department employees. The special courtesy could include not receiving citations for traffic violations and not being arrested for drug violations, alcohol violations, and/or domestic issues. What, if anything, would you do regarding this unwritten Maui Police Department policy?
Thank you for that question. It would be immediately addressed and stopped throughout the department. There's no room for any kind of special favors for anyone. Everyone has, or it comes under the law, including and especially officers of the Maui Police Department and their families. This type of situation has occurred back in the day, as far as having somebody call and say, hey, so-and-so, I'm stopping so-and-so, he knows you, he's dropped your name. I've always said, you do what you have to do. If that person deserves a citation, give them a citation. If that person needs to be arrested, arrest them. Because at no point is that person above the law and should be treated differently than anybody in the community or in the department. So that rule, if it's unwritten, would now be written to make sure, to stress that there is no favoritism to be shown throughout the department. Now, do officers have the discretion? Obviously, depending on the situation, they can do what they need to do in any situation, but there will be no special unwritten rule to suggest that officers and their families or friends be allowed to circumvent the rules and the laws of the county and the state or the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Pelletier, shortly after becoming chief, you discover there's a long-standing unwritten Maui Police Department policy that extends special courtesy to off-duty police officers, elected officials, and family members of Maui Police Department employees. This special courtesy could include not receiving citations for traffic violations and not being arrested for drug violations, alcohol violations, and/or domestic issues. What, if anything, would you do regarding this unwritten Maui Police Department policy?
Well, great question. You can't do the wrong thing by doing the right thing. Right thing is doing what is required and expected. And I say that because if you have an unwritten policy saying go and do the wrong thing, well, then you want to codify exactly what the right thing is and make sure that it's very clear that all people are protected under the same rule of law and everything is expected to be the same. When it's not, then you have disparate treatment. When it's not, then you have yourself open to criticism. When it's not, you've compromised your integrity. I happen to come from a place that has a whole lot of VIPs a whole lot of the time. And they all, oh, so-and-so is this and so-and-so is that. And here's what I say, do what you would do with anybody else. And if you do that, you can't do the wrong thing. And let's talk about, since you brought up the question of alcohol and drugs and domestic violence. I'm going to make it a mission that we focus primarily on violent crime. Often, domestic violence gets overlooked and swept under and not made to be the issue that it is. And if we have elected officials or people in power committing such an egregious crime, they need to be held to the highest standard possible. That is not right. That is an abuse of power. And everybody deserves to make it a point that their loved ones or those held in authority and power are not committing violent crimes and violent acts. And so we want to make sure that we're treating everyone the right way and that we emphasize our core values, we emphasize what's important, and that we are above the fray. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, this is purely hypothetical. Shortly after becoming chief, you discover there's a long-standing unwritten Maui Police Department policy that extends special courtesy to off-duty police officers, elected officials, and family members of Maui Police Department employees. This special courtesy could include not receiving citations for traffic violations and not being arrested for drug violations, alcohol violations, and/or domestic issues. What, if anything, would you do regarding this unwritten Maui Police Department policy?
This is exactly the question we ask recruits coming in. If you would arrest your mother for DUI or issue her a citation for speeding. That's a really difficult question. The answer that I expect, and the answer I'm going to give the police commissioners is kind of two-part. The officer does have discretion when it comes to minor incidents, citations, speeding, and so on. But when it comes to drug use and abuse, there's no discretion there. I think the officer has to take action. He has to make the arrest, has to make the case. If there's an unwritten rule, of course, right off the bat, you have to snub that out and say that's not allowed. But you have to trust your officers to use the discretion and to treat people fairly under the law, because a situation that we bring up is, for example, let's say your mother gets pulled over for speeding, or your grandmother gets pulled over for speeding. She can barely survive on her monthly Social Security check. And the question that we ask is, would you give, so-and-so's mother a citation, Captain's mother citation, AC's mother citation? And what we're getting at is, if the answer is yes, and you know their situation, what we're getting at is, well, sometimes giving a warning or making a case has the same impact as writing a citation. So you got to look at the impact, the outcome. Some cases, some felony cases, DUI, drug cases, without question, that has to end if there is that unwritten rule. But you still have to apply discretion. We don't want our officers to be robots out there. That causes a lot of problems when it comes to community relations. When you have an officer that doesn't use his discretion, that everything is black and white, it creates issues for us. Compassion is part of our policy too. I think we can do that. And if you can enforce the law fairly in a way that you can get your point across, using your discretion under those circumstances, I think you could be just as effective. But I might be going a little off the question, but that's the exact same question we use for recruits. And it's a really difficult one because you don't want robots.
Thank you very much. So, candidate Ferreira, again, purely hypothetical question. Shortly after becoming chief, you discover there's a long-standing unwritten Maui Police Department policy that extends special courtesy to off-duty police officers, elected officials, and family members of Maui Police Department employees. This special courtesy could include not receiving citations for traffic violations and not being arrested for drug violations, alcohol violations, and/or domestic issues. What, if anything, would you do regarding this unwritten Maui Police Department policy?
I would discuss with my executive staff and let them know my actions. Because growing up in the department, I've come across that a lot of times. I had no hesitation arresting my good neighbor, my good friend, my classmate, if he was really wrong. Family members the same. They know where the line is drawn, and if they go beyond that line, they get taken down. But discretion does come in, warranted at times, but I would encourage everybody to do the right thing. For me, I had no issues. And if the family member was upset with me the next day, or my friend didn't come over and have a drink, that's their loss. Because I'm out there to do my job, protect the community, and so my family and my friends from wrongdoing. That's it.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson, again, purely hypothetical. Shortly after becoming chief, you discover there's a long-standing unwritten Maui Police Department policy that extends special courtesy to off-duty police officers, elected officials, and family members of Maui Police Department employees. This special courtesy could include not receiving citations for traffic violations and not being arrested for drug violations, alcohol violations, and/or domestic issues. What, if anything, would you do regarding this unwritten Maui Police Department policy?
First off, unwritten policies probably are the most detrimental. That has to be addressed. If it's an unwritten policy, then it becomes cultural, and that has to be addressed. So the first thing I would do is address that. But let's talk more specifically to the actual question. There is no leeway when it comes to abuse cases. There is no discretion. If physical force is used, the person's going to be arrested. It doesn't matter if it's the President of the United States. State law dictates. When it comes to drugs, it's pretty much the same thing. We don't allow officers to get away with drug behavior. We don't allow them to get away with domestic abuse. And our department, and this is Chief Ramos touched on this, our department is very good when it comes to actually enforcing against our own. We will arrest our own. We've done it before. We'll do it again. But more specifically, let's talk about a blanket, no way, Jose. Well, when I was in patrol many, many years ago, I made a lot of traffic stops. I issued very few citations because I was taught that it's the idea behind a citation is to modify their behavior so they don't do it again. Now, if I can modify their behavior using my discretion, I've accomplished my job. So I'll stop everybody and tell them what they're doing wrong and then send them on their merry way. If I catch them again, well, I wasn't successful the first time, so now I'm going to be more successful. Modifying behavior is the true reason why we make traffic stops and one of the big reasons why we issue citations. We've always found it easier to issue a citation rather than scraping somebody off the road, and that hasn't changed. Now, the idea that if you take away an officer's discretion for handling that, I would disagree with that. But your question is a little bit more specific. What about VIPs? What about ex-police officers? What about your family members? Well, let's take family first. If I stop my mom, there's no way I'd issue a citation. Instead, what I'd do is I'd rip her apart and say, we will discuss this when I get home. Okay, so I've modified my behavior. I've modified her behavior I protected the public. If she got into an accident, she'd get the citation, she'd be treated just like any other citizen. Discretion is very important because it gives a little leeway. You're working with the community and you don't want to take away that leeway. On the other hand, VIPs who feel entitled, more likely than not, are going to get a citation. But I can't say that definitely. It depends on the circumstances as they exist at the time. Once again, we get back to modifying behavior. You issue a citation to modify behavior. You modify behavior by hit them in a pocketbook because it's taking somebody's money away from them hurts. So that modifies their behavior. They're educated. But taking money away from rich people doesn't necessarily hurt. And so before I would blanketly give a VIP a free ride, I would have to really consider it. Let's say I stopped my B partner. I'm not going to give him a citation. I'm going to chew him out. I'm going to let him know that this stuff cannot happen. I don't want to go to the sergeant, but I will. You cannot do this. So, Chief Ramos is right. You cannot take away some discretionary authority with the police department. It has to have some discretion to carry out its thing. And keep in mind, we live with the community. We have houses in the community. We have roots in the community. While we're not adverse to enforcing laws, we are very compassionate towards our community. So if it's a policy statement, that has to stop. If it's removing discretion, I will caution against it. If it's abuse, if it's drugs, or if it's other criminal conduct, there is no discretion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, we'll start with candidate Pelletier.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You figured that one out right before I thought about it. Okay. In thinking about your career as a police executive, taking into consideration all of the people inside and outside of law enforcement you have come in contact with, and all of the operational decisions you have made, what would you cite as your greatest single achievement or success?
Well, today is the fourth anniversary of 1 October. 4 years ago today, I was at my house when the phone rang, and my wife got word that there was an active shooter in the area that I was responsible for, the Las Vegas Strip, specifically the lot across from Mandalay Bay. Having kept all my gear like I did for when I was in SWAT, I grabbed my radio, turned it on, and I could hear the gunfire and the chaos, and I knew I had officers shot, and I knew it was really bad. I got everything together and was out the door within minutes, notifying the chain of command and getting the response. And I knew I had to take incident command and get my hands wrapped around and stabilize this. It was imperative because we had incredible loss of life. And so building a team together and figuring out what we had, and I don't think people really understand the magnitude of this, because we would lose 58 people that day. We had 850 injured. 450 of those would be shot. I had an officer killed, 3 more shot, and they're my officers. I had my officers coming into the command post, and their uniforms were covered in blood. I heard an officer in the command post whose twin brother was shot in the neck. I say that because it took years to build the response. It took years to get that right. And we got that right, and we got our hands around it, and we did something incredible. And we took the biggest crime scene, second only to 9/11, and we did everything to mitigate that. We brought a community together. We did something really, really great. And it's not lost on me, the question, it's not lost on me, the date. And I tell you that because there is no challenge professionally that I could not handle. I didn't do that alone. If you want to see, there's a documentary called Valiant. There's podcasts by UNLV. I'm listed in the FEMA report. So I'm very humbled. Please know that. I don't sit here and say this was a me effort, but I know I helped save lives. I know I helped the community. I've had family members that lost loved ones hold me and cry, and I hold them back, and that's okay. That's okay. And so professionally, I would say that. If I may just qualify my answer personally, I was fortunate enough a long time ago, while I was off duty, to go over to a car stop where a lady was trapped in a burning vehicle. And she was hanging out of the car, and people kept driving by. And I pulled her out of that car seconds before it exploded, and she was completely scalped all the way back to where her skull was exposed, and her arms were both broken, and her eye was blown out. And I put her head back, and I wrapped her, and I held her hand, and I said, "It's okay, ma'am, I'm a police officer." Her name's Deidre, and she's alive today. And Deidre had 2 small children at the time, 2 little boys. And she was never supposed to have kids again. She was supposed to lose her arm. She was supposed to lose her eye. But not only did she survive, but Deidre had 2 small little girls after the fact. And I hope those girls can go on and be the President of the United States or the Governor of Hawaii. I hope they can be incredible things. But I am so proud of the fact that I saved her life. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos. In thinking about your career as a police executive, taking into consideration all of the people inside and outside of law enforcement you have come in contact with, and all of the operational decisions you have made, what would you cite as your greatest single achievement or success?
As a police executive, before I start, I'd say good job, John. That was good. As a police executive, as an assistant chief, just making the rank, first of all, of an assistant chief with my background. But being part of and in charge of the Uniformed Services Bureau was probably my greatest honor and greatest achievement. We worked with hundreds of police officers, manpower shortage, but we were able to forge a unified bureau to the point where morale, despite the manpower issues, morale was high. And why was it high? Because everybody had the same mindset. Everybody came to work to do the best job that they could. It became a point of contention that if you were assigned to a burglary case, that you did your due diligence as a preliminary officer to investigate, contact neighbors, get videos. And it was a point of pride to pass it over to CID to say, look, it's all yours. We did all the work, it's all yours. And that became a cultural thing. And part of that success was because of discipline. That's always part of it. Because I've learned through that experience that in discipline there is freedom. Everybody understands where they stand. And why does it increase morale? It's because everybody's treated fairly. The scrubs are being addressed, and the point to address that is to make them better officers. Ultimately, the goal is to provide the best community service, the best police service to the community that you can. But to see that happen, to see the commanders, the lieutenants, the sergeants, the officers grasp the same vision of outstanding police service, and you hear feedback from the community, from retired officers saying, wow, things are different. I would say that's my greatest achievement as an executive.
Candidate Pereira, in thinking about your career as a police executive, taking into consideration all of the people inside and outside of law enforcement you have come in contact with, and all of the operational decisions you have made, what would you cite as your greatest single achievement or success?
I believe my greatest single success on my time as a police department or a police officer has been during my community activities outside of the department. And that's primarily dealing with I love to coach football, and I started at a young age coaching Pop Warner and moving up to high school. And I'm also an official. I mean, short and sweet, the greatest enjoyment was seeing one of your players who came from a broken home and suffered, but, encouraging and coaching, and just to see him come out a better citizen and going to college, obtaining a degree, and coming back home and giving back to his community. I think that's my greatest accomplishment. Work, yes, I've moved up the ranks. People have learned off of my command, how I command, and even though I'm a captain, I still respond to cases, especially big cases, and I try not to overtake command, but sometimes you have to, and just it makes it easier because sometimes when I listen, nothing's going right, or like the latest incident we had was at Maui golf course, gunshots in the area. I hear officers responding, but there's no coordination going on by the watch commander or the supervisors. So, I come on the air, I respond, and while I'm responding, I'm already coordinating, set up a perimeter, make sure, everything is settled. And then I get off my car and I meet the officers, and then we do a grid stretch and go in. We did catch the youths, but lucky it was weapons, but it was modified to shoot blanks. But, officers, commanders have learned how I work, and some of them emulate that when they're responding to heavy cases. And that's work-wise, that's the greatest accomplishment.
Very much. Candidate Hudson, in thinking about your career as a police executive, taking into consideration all the people inside and outside of law enforcement you had come into contact with, and all of the operational decisions you made, what would you cite as your greatest single achievement or success?
Thank you. First off, my compliments, Major. Good job. My greatest success to the department is actually kind of thankless. I did the $37 million Kihei station. That was my project. I created the county morgue. That was my project. I organized the Glock transitional, where we transitioned from revolvers to semi-automatic pistols. I wrote the first body armor specifications for the department. Along with Chris Gilbert, I worked on getting the AEDs issued to all the police vehicles. I spent 10 years in training. Mary Wagner started the IT project. I was fortunate enough to come along and finish it. In the Hana Cottage, which was a very difficult project. It came out to be $600 per foot on a cottage on land that we already owned. So my contributions to the department, whenever I see an officer, I can see my contributions with the body armor, with the firearms, with the oleoresin capsaicin that Captain Hirata and I worked on getting. When they use the Kihei station and I drive by, I'm very proud. Don't get thanks for that. When they use the morgue, which was a very interesting project, and I'm not familiar with any other police officer that was assigned to build a morgue, but I think I was unique in that. Many of my contributions to the department, while they're constantly used, there is no thanks. But in direct answer to your question, it would be all of those projects is my contribution to the department. What was my success? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Candidate Jacobzak, in thinking about your career as a police executive, taking into consideration all of the people inside and outside of law enforcement you have been coming into contact with, and all of the operational decisions you have made, what would you cite as your greatest single achievement or success?
Thank you for that question, First John, for your work that day. I know that I just saw the news today. the anniversary of that horrific event. It's funny, I'm the last one to speak on this question, and I'm listening to the other gentleman, and I'm not really, I'm trying to think. I have to go through 34 years of a career and figure out what do I put over everything else. It's very difficult. So, but there's so many, and then one of the things I want to mention was as a assistant chief at support services, when I first got into the as an assistant chief, I was fortunate to be selected to serve on the E911, the State of Hawaii E911 board. And this board, which I'm still a part of it as we speak, helps the department of the public safety answering points to procure money or funds to modernize their technology and to get the best state-of-the-art equipment for communications to communicate with the community so that they can contact for whether it's a police officer they need, a fire department, a medical assistance. And so, I'm going to reach out to Assistant Chief Ramos. He's also been on that as well. But this allowed us to reach out and help and assist many people, not just in the county, but in the state of Hawaii. This is a state board. And one of the things that I helped to procure was, along with, I want to give her name, shout out to David Ricadio, is text to 911, the ability, the service of text to 911 for all of the state of Hawaii, I think particularly for Maui and Molokai and Lanai, so that people could text if they were not able to call. And so we got that going, and that's more of a event or accomplishment that doesn't necessarily speak law enforcement, but it speaks to the community, speaks to assistance, it speaks to what we can provide to the community to help them in their everyday usage. There's so many 911 calls every day that our dispatchers need the ability to communicate and send the right resources to these agents, to these people. Also, and it was brought up, and because I thought about this, and it's not the biggest actual accomplishment, personally, is seeing all these officers, young men, who I also coach high school football with at a local school. How many of those became police officers? That I hope and pray that I had some type of inspiration or ability to motivate them to become and to serve their community as a police officer, including my son, including my nephew, who've dedicated their life to service in this community, And so that's my biggest proud moment, is they're not just my former players, they're my kids as well, all of them. And I follow their careers and what they're doing, and they made me so proud to be where I am today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, good. So we'll go on to the next question. Candidate Ramos, we'll start with you.
Sir.
Maui has a huge homeless population and issues associated with homelessness. What strategies would you employ to address Maui Police Department's response to issues associated with the homeless on Maui?
It's an issue that certainly Maui Police Department has been dealing with for years. It's not a position we'd like to be in because we are primary law enforcement. But we do understand that people look to the police to assist with these kinds of issues. I would continue what's being done right now to work with other county agencies. There's not much we can do when it comes to the economical situation of the people involved. The only thing we can do is offer them assistance by working with those other agencies. We've been accused of being overhanded, being a little bit too aggressive. And maybe that's true, but I would ask that the public would give us patience, more patience and understanding, because it's a difficult situation to be in, to address. But cooperation with other agencies, making sure that all the officers involved understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and making sure that the people that we're encountering and dealing with and helping understand the same thing too, that we're all there to help them, is important. But I think at some point, government has to do something to maybe help us with the situation. We cannot be the only main driving force to deal with homeless issues, and we have been for years. And we've taken the hit for it because of that. And it's unfair. But we do what we need to do to, with the tools we have, to provide assistance to the homeless.
Thank you very much. Candidate Ferreira, Maui has a huge homeless population and issues associated with homelessness. What strategies would you employ to address MPD's response to issues associated with the homeless on Maui?
We just went through that last week or the week before. There was Amala Place. But prior to that, community police officers were always minded that compassion comes first and understanding. We have a job to do and we'll do it. But as long as we have a plan, and for example, Amala, it was county and private entities that were involved for several months in dealing or working with, as we like to say, the community down there, finding housing for them, getting them critical help. It's sad to see that our job, yes, is enforcement. That's why we look bad. But somebody has to do it when it comes down to it. But the biggest thing is just remind everybody, you guys got to have compassion. And that could be your family member out there. You know what I mean? And the biggest thing with such an operation like this is making sure that everyone in the community is aware of what's happening and what's the progression before police really get involved and move in. The biggest thing, communication among everybody. But as I say, we look like the bad guys because that's our job. But this last one, a lot of them moved out with the help of the Family Home Life Center. And we were primarily there to ensure that Public Works, the State Department, everybody was at a safe and safe environment to work and complete their job of removing abandoned vehicles, trash, and cleaning up the area. And, the media, everybody was invited, but they had to stay behind the barriers. And that was for their safety and everybody else's safety. Yes, we did look like the bad guys, but biggest thing is going in with compassion. And I'll make sure that it's done every time.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson, Maui has a huge homeless population and issues associated with homelessness. What strategies would you employ to address Maui Police Department's response to issues associated with the homeless on Maui?
Thank you. I do not believe Maui is unique with that problem. I think there is a homelessness problem throughout the United States. More specifically, the question deals with how would I deal with it. We would have to find out the people that are homeless. There are many people who don't want to be homeless, and there are many resources out there that these people could be placed in. We would also have to understand that there are some people who want to be homeless. and there might be some problems with that. But Captain Ferreira touched on it, compassion, compassion, compassion. When you're dealing with somebody, because these people live in their houses, their vehicles or their houses, their homes, their little wooden structures on the side of the road, that's their home. And now the police have the task of removing them from their homes and disposing of their homes. And it should not be the entire function of the police department. The police department has to develop better relationships or stronger relationships with the entities that help the homeless, your churches, your county agencies, your state agencies, and even your federal agencies. You have to ascertain who wants to be homeless and who doesn't, and get those that don't want to be homeless some help. And understand that there's no panacea for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Jacob Zach, Maui has a huge homeless population and issues associated with homelessness. What strategies would you employ to address Maui Police Department's response to issues associated with the homeless on Maui?
Thank you. First of all, the first thing everyone has to realize is the police or law enforcement is not the answer. We're part of the solution, though. We can come up with plans. We can work with other agencies, private and public, to find better solutions to house these individuals who are just like anybody else, who deserve the dignity and respect of any other community member in this community. With that being said, now we have to start thinking outside the box. It was mentioned that Amala Place last week, there was a big homeless population there. I drove by there almost every other day, and the reason why that population had to be relocated or moved out, part of it anyway, was some of their structures and vehicles were impeding on the roadway, which made it very unsafe for them and other vehicles obviously traveling the roadway. So it was not a safe environment to be in for them and for anybody else. What we need to do is possibly partner with a private entity. And I'll give you an example, and I haven't reached out to these people or talked to anybody else, but it was mentioned, it's not my idea, that how about if the county or someone gives a piece of property or a location where homeless people can go to. Well, I thought about, how about we partner with a private entity such as maybe Mahipono? Can we have some housing on a piece of property where some of those individuals also could work for Mahipono in the fields or somewhere on their property as a means of living, to earn a living, or basic necessities. What that does also, when you have a place to go, is services. Public services can come, or social services can come to one location, and people can get medical, psychological, mental health assistance in one location. They don't have to find transportation to go and look for it, or that wouldn't be a deterrent to look for help or assistance. So, in a sense, law enforcement can help with those ideas, manifest those plans, those promises, or not promises, but those plans to help the houseless individuals. So, and this particular topic also is close to my heart, because I've had a family member who was houseless and lived on the streets for a while, and I found out through them the difficulty of living on the streets, and the need for a vehicle to have a roof over your head, and to live in the shadows for protection, because you don't want to live anywhere where somebody can see you and come up to you. So those people, they want help or assistance, but a lot of them are too proud to ask for it. And it was mentioned prior on a cleanup that we did in Lahaina years ago when I was a captain in District 4, Lahaina. We did a cleanup, and we came across an individual who was in a camp by himself, just a little away from a major camp, and he did not want services. He was happy to be houseless. He had a job, made his earning, but his personality, his lifestyle was that of, don't want to live by anybody else. I'm kind of a loner, but he could not afford a regular apartment or a housing. And so, it was interesting to see their story, their reason, the reason why they choose to stay that way. But yeah, so to summarize, the department's not the answer. You cannot just keep on telling MPD do this, MPD do that. We need to be part of a solution to address homelessness.
Thank you very much. Candidate Pelletier. Maui has a huge homeless population and issues associated with homelessness. What strategies would you employ to address Maui Police Department's response to issues associated with the homeless on Maui?
Homelessness is not a crime. Homelessness is a public health crisis, a socioeconomic failure by society. I say that because law enforcement does absolutely have a role in public safety. Some strategies that I will do is some things that I have done in the past. I told you about my area of responsibility and the size and the scope. One of the things that I had done on a regular basis, I met with my stakeholders, my elected officials. I met with judges. I've met with district attorneys. I helped judges write for grants to create a community impact center that dealt with low offender level issues and crimes. If you have the ability to do that and partner with the various different groups that this issue touches, veteran services, social services, different religious outgroups, I can continue to list them, and you put them right in the court, you have the ability to get folks helped up. The last thing we want to do is re-victimize, re-traumatize people for things that aren't even crimes. I say that because let's just use the veteran services and how this actually would work. You encounter a individual who's unhoused, and that individual happens to be a veteran. There are services that they earned because of their service in the military. And so they have health care and they have certain benefits. And if they're mentally ill or different rating, there's a way to help. But what if they don't have an ID? Put that service bank in the court. Now you get them an ID. And you get them an ID, now you can get them a job. And you can get them on the path to move forward. This is a it takes a village issue. 100%. This is something that we've got to delicately balance. I would also create, this is not hard, I can do it very easily, the HART team, Homeless Assistance Response Task Force. Task force means multiple different components within the group. So we would put some of these different social services connected, and we would go and find out where the unhoused hotspot areas are. Start creating inroads into that. Start creating community engagement into those issues so you can find out what's going on. That's not hard. And if you are able to do that, and if they're service resistant, okay, but you tried. And you have to do that outreach, because if you have to do enforcement, if you have to do it, and I'm not saying you don't, but if you have to, you've done all this before. And it's a lot kinder, it's a lot more compassionate, it's a lot more understanding that you did all these. And I don't know why the outsider is the one that's going to quote the former king, but the law of the splintered paddle is in the Constitution. We swore an oath to do it, so it's a very delicate balance if people are on the side of the road. It's a delicate balance, so we have got to manage that in the best way possible so that we are not in violation of the Constitution, but we are dealing with public safety. And if you use that as an avenue, you absolutely can move the problem, but realize what the problem is. When I said it's a public health crisis, the average unhoused in Hawaii has a 30-year less life expectancy. That's worse than HIV and AIDS was in the 80s, but we sit here and we ignore that. People just need help, and they need us to help get them there. We have so much partnerships and so many things we have not even yet tapped with. If you're homeless and it's 87 degrees every day, it's a pretty dang good place to be homeless in. And I say that because there's sometimes an entrenchment into an area where you have an inability, once people feel that they're helpless and not here, they don't necessarily want to go reconnect into other places. But we can work with partners and get people reconnected with their families and their loved ones so that we can get them the help that they need, because everybody wants to have their life the best it can be. And we're there in public safety, in service of the community, trying to do everything we can to move this issue forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think we've come to, a natural juncture. It's about 11:30, Commissioners. I'm thinking right now that we take our lunch break now, because there's just a few more questions after this, and then we can come back, give everybody a chance to stretch their legs, get some cow, right? Without objection, I'm going to recess till, let's make it till, can't get my clock up here. Why don't we make it till 12:45? Okay?
Are you going to lock the room?
I think there's somebody, yeah, you can lock the room. Yes, we can lock the room. Perfect. So we can just leave our stuff here. So we're recessed now to 11:45. 12:45. I'm sorry. 11:45. We'll be back later then. 11:45. 12:45. Okay, it's 12:47, and we've returned from recess. And I call the special meeting of the Maui Police Commission to order. Okay, let's continue with the questions. This one starts again with Candidate Ferreira. Candidate Ferreira, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
I believe one of my strengths is communicating with the people I work with and for, and with the community. And it has shown during my community service as a football coach and an official, and just hanging out with family and friends. I'm kind of a shy guy. I mean, not shy, but find myself to be low-key. But sometimes just eye reaction, body movement, it gets the message across. That's my biggest asset. Besides knowing everybody, half everybody, I know them, grew up with them, or they're related to me somehow. And that's what makes everything a family. That's
Video.
It's off.
Oh, the video's off.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Do we need to do that answer again? I think so, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry about that.
I can't rewind now.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay. So what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Okay, I started with my strength, which was interacting. But I find myself as a low-key person. I do a lot of listening before replying, and it's just the relationships I build up with friends, family, co-workers. And I always have an ear to listen. I mean, I listen to everybody before I say anything, like I said. And my weaknesses is sometimes put on the pedestal. Sometimes you got to answer. And, you know, I have to do a lot of research to make sure I get the right answers. But in the spot of the moment, you know, when there's a long pause, is I'm trying to gather my thoughts and make sure the right things come out of my mouth. That's what my weakness is. But I think I'm doing fine so far.
Okay. Thank you. Candidate Hudson, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Well, first off, I have no weaknesses. No, I'm joking. I think my strengths are is that I get the job done. I've never failed in an assignment I was given. I complete all of my assignments in a timely manner. Most of my assignments are completed within budget and on time. There's been a couple notable exceptions, like the renovations to the Lahaina Station, the Hana Cottage, but the Kihei Station was completed on time and within budget. I'm very empathetic. I always put myself in the other person's shoes. And through empathy, you can make a lot of good decisions because you can understand what the other people are saying. I listen to subordinates. I listen to suggestions. I don't care if it's a person on the street. The suggestion itself is what has merits. So I listen to pretty much everybody's suggestion. The end decision would be mine, but the more input I can get, the better decision I could make. My weakness is, and my family is well aware of this, my weakness is when I accept a responsibility, I own it. It's mine. And I'm going to carry that ball until I cross the goal line or I'm going to die trying. And this is not necessarily always a good thing. Sometimes you have to back up a little bit and say, take your time, go back to the drawing board and relax. So my strength is I'm going to get it done. My weakness is it's going to be a process. Another strength is empathy, which I think if everybody had empathy and the ability to listen, not just hear, but actually listen to what people say. Everybody can hear, but it takes a special good talent to listen and understand what somebody's trying to get across. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Candidate Jacobzak, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Thank you for that question. My strengths are my communication skills. I can speak to anyone from any background, from any culture, and communicate effectively, as well as speak to them on the same plane or the same level. I don't talk down to people. I bring people up. And I get my point across, what I need to do, what they need to do, and everyone is informed of what's going on. Also, my compassion for other people. I put myself in their shoes, as was mentioned, empathy, but I also have compassion for people. I treat them with dignity and respect, as well as in this culture, Hawaiian culture, I grew up caring and taking care of other people. And what I mean by that is the kapunas or keiki, who are the less fortunate. I was always taught to care for others, to take care of others, the less fortunate. So I had those skills. I can plan, I can coordinate. I don't quit. I think that's the biggest thing right there is I don't quit. If something's given to me, I'm not going to quit till it's done. And it's going to be done right. As far as a weakness, I think one weakness that I can really point out or own up to or whatever you want to admit to is technology. I'm not the greatest computer technician there is out there. At times, I may even have to ask my grandson to say, hey, come over here, help Papa with this. But for the most part, I can get by on the technology. I'm just not the best at it. So that would be my weaknesses and my strengths. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Candidate Pelletier?
Yes, sir.
What are your strengths and weaknesses?
I'll answer two strengths and two weaknesses. And before I do, obviously talking about strengths and what we're proud of and different things like that, I think humility and being contrite are important things, and so I don't say things necessarily to be boastful. I just want to make sure that I convey that because it is a get to know you sort of deal here, and if I don't say these, then you'll never know that. So I just wanted to make sure I emphasize that. My first strength would be my passion, my drive, my conviction. I know that it's what guides me. I know I'm a driven person. I know it's infectious. I know that I have inspired and motivated people. I know that I'm relentless in what I choose to do, and I will not let it go because that's just the way that I am, and I don't say things if I don't mean them. When I talk about these projects and these ideas and moving the agency, moving the county, moving things forward, it's because I know I can do it together with everyone else. And I don't just tell you that just to tell you that. I tell you that because I honestly believe it. My second strength, I would say, is my level of engagement. I know and I spend time and I invest in that which I am a part of. I inspect what I expect. I make it a point to go around asking questions. I tell people, explain it to me like I'm 5, because I want to make sure I know. I tell folks, let me know what the important parts are. Tell me what the details are. And you get so much out of your ability to lead when you, 1, don't micromanage, but 2, you go and check. And you say, was that done? Explain that. And I think that that combination has allowed me to be successful. Weaknesses. I can often be verbose and long-winded. And I have worked really hard on trying to make the point, get off the point, make the point, get off the point. And it's a struggle. So I give you a total transparency, honest weakness, but I am working through it. Because we had the conversation about how neat it is to live stream this, and there's folks on the 9th island watching, I would have shenanigans called on me by my family if I didn't say that I have no mechanical inclination. I don't fix anything in my house. My wife, I bought her tools one year for Christmas, in addition to other nice items, but the kids joke about it. If the sink's broke, I can hold something up, I can carry something, and I'll hold the flashlight, but my wife fixes the vast majority of things, and that's just the truth. So there's my answer.
Very much. You and I should start a club about the verbosity thing. So, Candidate Ramos, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
I'll start with my weaknesses. Although I can speak and communicate to people, I can work on that as far as addressing large crowds. I know that's part of the responsibilities of the chief, and I do realize that's a weakness of mine. Also, another weakness is, you've seen it, my handwriting, it's horrendous. That's why, that was a joke. That's why I'm better with a keyboard. I think I probably can improve on interacting with other people that I'm not comfortable with, but people that I don't know. My strengths, I believe my leadership is a strength. I have a proven track record in the department of sound decisions. And I know that my men trust me. I think my integrity is sound as well. I've always carried myself with integrity and honor. And at the same time, too, even though I'm not very good at speaking out to the public, I do think that I have a strength in communicating with officers one-on-one. My answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, So we'll start with candidate Hudson. Describe how you would balance transparency and secrecy in the department's relationship to the public, and how you will expedite the publishing of general orders on the department's website.
Transparency, as I mentioned several times before, is not an ice cream flavor. It's the way we live. It's like the air we breathe, and we only talk about it when we can't breathe. There are several things to do to address transparency, and that is to meet with your officers, to talk with your officers, to meet with the public, to speak with the media, to respond to questions. And if somebody asks a question, this leads into your second part, what about secrecy? If the question involves an ongoing investigation, it can't be answered. But more importantly than that, I'm going to tell you why it can't be answered. I'm going to cite how come we can't answer. Either it's through a written directive, it's through a statute, it's through a HAR, or whatever, but there's a reason why we can't answer. And that's what I'm going to do. But on a weekly media basis, weekly, not monthly, not all this thing. If there's nothing happening, fine, we'll still hold a meeting. It's incumbent upon the media to get the message out to everybody. And it's incumbent upon the police to let as much information out as is possible. Secrecy has to be kept confidential, and because lives are at stake. We cannot release information that would jeopardize an officer, obviously. We cannot release information that would put a dim light on somebody when it's not warranted. Yeah, these are investigations, and they have to continue until they're done. Timeline of investigations are a different matter. And the investigation should be investigated as quickly as possible so that we can tell people we're almost there. Give us a little while longer, and we're going to be there. That is, it's not done, it's not done, it's not done. Americans are difficult people. We are. But if you tell an American why something is the way it is, well, they might hem and haw and complain. They're going to go, all right, fine. And that's the key. Communication with the public is key. And getting back to your original question, transparency is what is going to be the life breath of the department. We will not interfere with confidential reports. That can't happen. But I'll tell you why. Whatever the statute is, I'm not going to come out and say, well, we can't release that information, and that's that. There has to be a reason. I'm going to tell you what the reason is, whatever it is. And if I don't have a reason, then I have a problem, because I'm always going to have a reason. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm not going to make a ruling on that at this point. If you think you've answered the question, I'm good with that. And I think the commissioner is as well. Okay. So, candidate Jacobzak, describe how you would balance the transparency and secrecy in the department's relationship to the public, and how you will expedite the publishing of general orders on the department's website.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the question. First of all, we have to define transparency. Transparency, the open and honest communication of shared information with the public and the police. And not only the public, but also of our personnel. Our personnel need to know what's going on, whether it's an order, whether it's a decision that's been made. Like was said previously, there are certain circumstances that dictate that information cannot go out, whether it's by law, by policy, through an investigation that could cause someone's danger to someone's life or and livelihood or other people. So in that sense, we would immediately, well, as soon as possible, release, admit, or identify a situation that we're working on to say, here it is. This is what's going on. There is more to this. However, it's under investigation. As soon as we get more information to investigate, a thorough investigation, then we can release information to the public and to the personnel and also checking with our partners, our corporation counsel, prosecutor's office, AGs, FBI, whoever we were working with, to get a decision to say when we can release additional information. So we want to be transparent as fully as we can, given the circumstances. And with that, it's going to be honest, open, and timely. Thank you.
Okay, very much. Candidate Pelletier, describe how you would balance transparency and secrecy in the department's relationship to the public, and how you will expedite the publishing of general orders on the department's website.
As I had said before, one of the presidential task force pillars is building trust, legitimacy, policing. Another pillar is policy and oversight. There should be no secrecy in policing. There can be confidentiality. There can be protections because of officer safety. There can be protecting the victims of, let's say, sexual assault or child abuse. Of course, internal investigations that deal with policy violations or allegations of misconduct. Of course, because we have to make sure that due process is followed. Answer your question. I don't see why policy should not be completely placed on the internet or the website for everyone to see, with the exception of certain tactics such as hostage barricade rescue. Nobody other than the officers doing those tactics really should know that. If it's an arrest or defensive tactics procedure, again, that's an officer safety issue. Those aren't out there. But as far as day-to-day operations and what we do, the public has a right to know. Police legitimacy is a contractual thing that takes place between law enforcement and the public. And the public gives us the right to do this job. There shouldn't be secrets with how we do this. It should be as open and as engaged as it possibly can. And when you do that, you start breaking down the walls and the barriers and the challenges that get in the way with establishing legitimacy. Why not be transparent? This is the most incredibly honorable profession. What job do you risk your life for someone you've never even met? This job does. This job is righteous and true and honorable. And what we do is not a secret. It is a calling. It is something special. And I have no problem, none, with balancing that question, because secrecy has no place in what we do here. Professionalism, engagement, transparency, trust, policy, oversight, the truth. That's what this profession is about. There are a lot of people that have given everything to this career. And we owe it to their legacy and their honor to make sure we never forget that. And when we tarnish it by holding things back, we diminish that sacrifice. Thank you.
Candidate Ramos, describe how you would balance transparency and secrecy in the department's relationship to the public, and how you will expedite the publishing of general orders on the department's website.
Definitely, transparency is definitely needed because it builds trust between the community and law enforcement. When it comes to general orders, I have no problem posting the general orders unless they reveal tactics. I think then that becomes an officer safety issue. Tactics and perhaps technology that we use, we want to keep that close to our chest because it's part of our tools to investigate crimes. I believe that's in review right now, and the next chief would see to it that it's completed. But there is an importance to reveal our general orders, and the public, they're interested now. Before they weren't interested, now they're interested, and we have nothing to hide. But again,
It can be held right there And then keep that thought in your head because you've just lost. There we go. Go ahead.
But again, as to reiterate, when it comes to tactics, those things have to be kept hidden. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
Yeah, can we turn off that the video, the monitor? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah. There we go. Thanks, Amy. Oh, that's okay.
We're on silence.
I feel like the technology issues.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how many times that's actually happened to me, so it's just exactly. Okay, so Janet, Jacob, Zach, you get to take the next
I
question.
don't think you're done.
Oh, is it Ferrer? Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. That kind of threw me off. Right. Where are we? Question 12. Oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, candidate Ferreira. So, describe how you would balance transparency and secrecy in the department's relationship to the public, and how you would expedite the publishing of general orders on the department's website.
Let me start with the second question. Policies and procedures is just like the HRS or Hawaii Right statutes, sort of. The only thing I would hold back is investigative techniques used by certain divisions and tactics, because that's going to be costly to the department and to the officers' lives. The second one, transparency versus secrecy or misuse of the word transparency. But lucky you separated. Transparency, I believe in transparency. What is there to hide? You know, if you're trying to cover up something, it only makes it worse. You know. Once the community suspects that you might be doing something wrong, then they're going to come to a conclusion you are doing something wrong. Yeah. Secrecy to me is based on what's being investigated or if allegations are made and strong investigations that's, you know, being investigated. Those that, you know what I mean, it's good. I'm looking for the right word. Accuser or victims should be ensured that once the investigation is done, that part of it might be released, minus the names, or nothing going to be released until we get clearance from me. It will be go through our corp counsel, our lawyers, to make sure that we don't step on anybody's toes or get somebody else injured or hurt because we release certain information when we shouldn't have. And that's where I lie.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Okay, now we'll move on to question 15. Sorry about that. So, there we go. Candidate Jacob Zach. Describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation counsel should play in your administration. Let me repeat that because it's kind of got 4 parts to it, right? Describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation counsel should play in your administration.
Thank you for that question. Each and every one of those entities plays a huge role in the police department. If we take each one separately, again, we'll start off with the mayor's office. Mayor's office, he's the head of the county. As a police officer or chief of police, he is a director under the mayor's office. So he would get assignments or assignments from the mayor's office to make sure that things are being done as to the vision of the mayor and his office and the different programs that are available to the public through the mayor's office. Our corporation counsel is the legal advisor of the police department. A lot of the things we do, we have to make sure we go through the corporation counsel to make sure we are doing it lawfully and that we are not subject to litigation in some of the things that we're planning to do or we have done or we are going to do. Going to the prosecutor's office, we work hand in hand. That's part of the law enforcement program. We arrest offenders, charge offenders, and send them to the prosecutor's office for the prosecution of those offenders. So we work hand in hand. There has to be a great relationship with all the entities I just mentioned. Getting to the police commission here, the police commission is a representation of the community. They're the community's voice. They have a hand in the direction of the police department in the sense that they help submit the budget for the police department. And I must say, in my time here, this last 2 or 3 year budget cycles, the police commission has gotten more and more involved each time, which is a great process because now we have different input. Not just from a police law enforcement perspective, but from the outside. So now we're getting a community engagement here. So the the commissioners help to evaluate the chief and his job, what he is doing to make sure everything is going correctly, that the police department is serving the public. And so each and every entity plays a vital role in law enforcement and the capabilities of the Maui Police Department to serve the Maui community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Pelletier,
Yes, sir.
describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation counsel should play in your administration.
When I had spoken about 2 topics prior, which was the definition of community policing, and I talked about it's a combination between the police and the public co-producing public safety. It's very much in line with the theme of my answer to your question, sir. When I had spoken about the pillars that the president established in policy and oversight, also in line to the question, I'd like to just reference that. I'd like to start with the police commission first, if I may. I work for you as the chief and the community holds me accountable through you. I report to you, and I will be beyond transparent with you. I will make it a point to understand what we, the commission, and I need to do to move forward in public safety with MPD. With relation to council, they are an incredible asset that defends the county and the department and the other entities when necessary. We have a little police term, they watch your 6 or watch your back so you don't step on a potential legal landmine. And they make sure that the best interests of the public are maintained and that the rule of law is followed, because we all swore the oath to make sure that that happens. The mayor is the voice of the people and the representation between the county council as their executive head. And I envision and will plan on having a very good relationship with Mayor Victorino, and I expect to have very good conversations on here's where we are and here's where we're going, and having him tell me here's where we are and here's where we're going, because I know that there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have working together. The district attorney is the law enforcement's partner in the criminal justice process. If law enforcement and the police department takes the crime all the way from the one end zone to the 99-yard line, or the 1 yard line, if you will. And they're on the 1 yard line. I was going to use a wave analogy, but I'll use so you're on the 1 yard line. And so at the 1 yard line, it's then the district attorney's job to punch it into the end zone. And if something faltered or fell short, was it a police issue that fell short? Well, I will have a fantastic working relationship with the district attorney because we all want to accomplish the same thing. And that's that criminal justice is served, and it's served lawfully and properly. I'd like to point out one entity that wasn't mentioned that I think is extremely critical, and that's the new fire chief. I have learned firsthand that integration between first responders is a vital component to public safety. I expect to have an individual within the training section of this department as the officer, the supervisor, whatever the role I'll designate, will be in charge of first response integration. And I will see if my counterpart in the FD leadership will have a law enforcement integration. Because I know that as we work through critical events, we take different leads. Some things will be fire department led, some things will be police led. And I believe that we need to integrate with our stakeholders and partners. I want to make sure that the tourist areas and that the security directors of the other hotels, in partnership with the Visitors Authority, gets some of the same first responder training. So that if we have to do a force protection pro and have FD fire go into the hot spots, they are trained and they know what that means. And I say that because all of this together, all of this builds the community. It makes it better. We are one department for one Maui, for one Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Ramos, describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation council should play in your administration.
The chief should have a very close relationship with the mayor, an honest, sometimes brutally honest relationship with the mayor. The mayor can have demands, but they may be a little bit more on the political side, and it's up to the chief to say, maybe we can do that, but we need to take a different approach. There needs to be definitely cooperation between that. But that relationship has to be honest, and it has to be raw, if possible. Well, not if possible, but if needed. The chief's relationship with the police commission is very, very important. After you guys select the chief. And so the chief, basically his actions reflect upon the police commission. And so it's very important for the chief to be honest with the commission when incidents of bad situations that the chief gets himself in, that you guys are aware of that the chief is honest enough to say, look, this is what's happening, to appraise you guys so you're not caught off guard in case you hear rumors. And that accountability has to be taken very seriously. The chief is also, with the police commission, there as a resource for you folks to conduct investigations. And you guys are limited in your not criminal complaint, but civil complaint investigations. And it's maybe something you have to shore up on because the officers actually do not have to respond. But you can always make your recommendation to the chief to have internal affairs or one of the assistant chiefs to make the assignments to address that particular demeanor issue. But because you guys are the voice of the community, you do represent the community. You come from Molokai, Lanai, different parts of Maui. And I think the reason why you're also very important is because you take the politics out of communication with the chief. Prosecutor's office, both law enforcement entities. They're one team, one member. One arrests, one develops the case, one does the investigations. Prosecutors take it to court. There has to be a very good relationship between prosecutors and the chief of police, as there is now, and that needs to continue. Again, open, honest relationship, open, honest communication with the prosecutor and the chief. Corporation counsel is a very important entity. I think we've kind of strayed away from our monthly meetings, meeting with Corporation Counsel. They provide so much wisdom, so much guidance, and we may not agree, but that's part of the discussion. If there's a reason why a law says this, we need to have that honest discussion as to why do you see it that way? And sometimes take the courageous stand of saying, okay, thank you for your advice, but we're going to go in this direction. But that communication, that interaction has to be consistent and sincere. They also help us a lot with our arbitration cases, and that's how we rely so much on the experience of our corporation counsel. So that relationship also has to be very tight. My answer.
Candidate Ferreira, describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation counsel should play in your administration.
Let me start off with the police commission. As the entity that will decide who will be the next chief, there's a relationship that has to be built, an understanding, and a commitment between both parties to ensure that we serve the public as designed. We should be open to each other and be honest and not hold grudges. You know what I mean? Take it, discuss it, and get to a remedy. For the Corp Council, that's our legal beagles. They guide us in our policies, procedures. They ensure that we're within the laws and work together. And that goes up to the mayor. Yes, the mayor is in charge. I mean, he's the head. We're just a department head. We're part of his cabinet. And that interaction or exchange of information has to be honest and true, because we are guiding the mayor so that he can make the best decision, and policies will be presented to the council. Prosecutor's office, we do the enforcement, they do the prosecution. Working together to ensure that we have a solid case before it's taken up. So the feedback between both parties are very vital to ensure that those that are at fault are found responsible. So it's a team effort in different aspects, but working together to better the community.
Thank you very much. Candidate Hudson, describe the roles the police commission, the mayor, the prosecutor's office, and the corporation counsel should play in your administration.
We'll take the police commission first. You have the pleasure of selecting the next chief of police. This is an immeasurable responsibility, as this affects all the citizens of Maui County. And the chief, in turn, has a responsibility to you to keep you abreast of what's going on. So when you go out into the public, you can inform the public of what's happening in the police department as much as possible, aside from confidentiality type issues. You have the responsibility to be more and more aware of the budget as to why things are the way they are. But more importantly, you have a responsibility to the chief. You have the responsibility to hold the chief responsible and accountable. That's your responsibility. Within your bylaws, you do his evaluations. Evaluations shouldn't wait for the end of the year. They shouldn't be scary time. They should be ongoing all the time. It's like a missile. When you fire a missile, it keeps on shooting radio waves back. How am I doing? Well, you got to correct this much. How am I doing now? You got to correct that much. How am I doing? I'm doing perfect. Well, how am I doing? And all the way until it gets there, it gets constant feedback. If you want an improvement in the chief, you guys have responsibilities too. It's not a one-way street. Okay, so the police commission does that. Talk about Corp Counsel. Corp Counsel is charged with the unenviable task of keeping us out of trouble. And sometimes we are reluctant to listen to them. They provide legal guidance. They provide understanding. They provide Hey, listen, I'm not sure if this is the right way to go. They do not direct you to do anything. The direction still has to lie with the department, because if it didn't lie with the department, then we wouldn't need a chief. We would just run it someplace else. It has to be separated, and that's the relationship. Work very, very closely and be very, very nice to them so they can keep us out of trouble. That's very good. When it comes to the prosecutors, well, that's a hand-in-hand type relationship. And for as long as I've had any kind of dealings with prosecutors, I've always find them to be on our side. Sometimes we mess up. Sometimes the prosecutors mess up. I've seen guilty people walk, and I've seen innocent people actually have to go on trial. There's checks and balances, and the partnership has to be maintained at the degree it is now. It's a very good partnership, at least to the best of my knowledge it is. And lastly, we get to the mayor, which is kind of in tangent with the police commission. The police department has to remain a certain level of neutrality. It cannot get involved in forcing people to vote this way or that way. If the mayor has so much authority over the chief of police that he could force the chief to do something the chief is not comfortable doing, and that's a wrong thing. So the police commission has to make sure that you select the best chief. I'm not saying that's the case, because Mayor Victorino and I, we know each other and we like each other and we worked each other in the past. But that's immaterial. What is material is that the chief and the mayor have to be able to work together. It cannot be a all shove and take on one side. There has to be decent communications. There has to be the ability to say no if the chief feels compromised. The mayor has to have the ability to try and put direction there and try and give direction, but he also has to understand that there are some things the police department cannot and should not do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So let's go on to the next question. Candidate Pelletier.
Yes, sir.
What are the qualities you will be looking for in a deputy chief?
That is a great question. It's probably one of the most important barometers for how successful my team will be early on. A good team will make or break your ability to move your agenda and what you want to accomplish forward. I say that because in selecting that individual, I've already given you my criteria. Again, content of character and work ethic. 51% of the population is female. The command staff, executive staff, and leadership of this department is seriously lacking in female leadership, and I find that incredibly disturbing. I will do my absolute best to pick the best person. I will look internally and externally. Benefits to internally. If I look internally, I have somebody that can help navigate some issues. When I say internally, however, I do not mean on Maui PD. They may have been past Maui PD. They may be on a different island even that have some ties to Maui PD. And I will look externally as well, because I want somebody that is going to understand my vision and where I want to take this agency. And it's extremely important that we do everything we can as a team to then build the assistant chief rank to also have the ability to move it forward. This question is also quite personal to me because I'm a third generation cop and my hero is my stepmom. And she was the second generation along with my dad. And she was the highest ranking female cop and the highest ranking black cop in the state of New York for 8 years. And her boss, the commissioner of Buffalo PD, credits him picking her as the best decision he ever made in order to move that agency forward. So I know how important that pick is. I also want, in my number 2, I want the ability for them, just like I told you earlier, about the ability for troops to go and talk about issues and concerns. If there's issues and concerns, or we might not see something, today's Friday, and we come up with a plan, but the plan come Wednesday is better, I want the deputy chief to tell me, hey, did you think about that? I disagree with this. With the understanding, though, that once the decision is made, it's our plan. And we move forward united together, and we drive where we need to go. I think, I know, and I believe that I will make that right selection and that we will move this agency forward.
Thank you very much. Candidate Ramos, what are the qualities you will be looking for in a deputy chief?
I'll be looking for somebody within the department for sure. And the reason why that is because that person has a relationship with the officers currently. Someone with good leadership abilities, someone who can communicate well with the men, can communicate the goals or the mission with the men. Not only in a formal setting, but also in an informal setting, someone that's going to mingle with the men, that's going to represent the chief's office to support not only our officers, but our civilians. And on the shoulders of that deputy chief, there's a lot of responsibility because he will be operating, he is in charge of operations of the PD. So it's all about manpower, it's all about assistant chiefs. He'll have to have the ability to interact with his assistant chiefs so that they're all on the same page, to keep them in check with their responsibilities, because running a bureau is intense. And the deputy chief needs to be aware of issues that he can address, or they can address together, or other things. One of the more important responsibilities of the deputy chief, too, is the Administrative Review Board process, the ARB. That process is, after a administrative investigation is complete, all the investigations from internal affairs from the other divisions go to the deputy chief. And he's the one that makes the assignments for the ARB and selects the captains that best fit that particular case. And their job is to make sure that they review the incident, review the complaint, demeanor complaint, criminal complaint, whatever it is, and to provide information to the chief. So that's a very, very important responsibility for the deputy chief. But the key quality that I'm looking for in an assistant chief is leadership ability and his ability to contact or to interact with fellow officers, civilian officers, and the community. If I were to step away, he should slide right in. In fact, he'll be a better communicator than me. And when you look at your deputy chief, you have to also look at the future of the department too. If this person will be the one that you think can carry on what started. So all those things have to be considered, but leadership definitely at the top of the list.
Thank you very much. Candidate Ferreira, what are the qualities you would be looking for in a deputy chief?
Qualities I'll be looking for in a deputy chief is his integrity, his commitment, and his communication skills. When I say commitment, he has to be able to, as Chief Ramos mentioned, be able to stand with me and step in when he has to correct me so that we can provide better leadership to those that we will choose to be our assistant chiefs. We have to have common ground and understanding of each other's talents and build on each other. The one thing is, it comes down to character and dedication and what I said. Because looking for candidates is hard to find. Real good qualified candidates that are strong and at the same time have compassion. Because like I say, we're dealing with a different generation nowadays. So able to lead and find the right candidates to be part of that team, we have to be on board with this, the same mindset and goals and objectives that I want to obtain as chief. And it's a hard job because there are good candidates and there are candidates that have certain qualities, but not all that I see I need. So that's how I'll choose the next deputy as my chief.
Thank you. Candidate Hudson, what are the qualities you will be looking for in a deputy chief?
I think it's easier if I answer that question with somebody I actually had in mind. She is a former commander from an outside district. She has leadership skills. She's intelligent. She's articulate. She is above reproach when it comes to her integrity. She is compassionate. She has demonstrated her ability to lead, direct, and supervise. She is actually a paragon amongst police commanders. I would have no problem selecting her. And the reason why I thought of her had nothing to do with gender. I selected her, or I would select her, because she is the best possible person for the job. And it's quite as simple as that. As I mentioned, she is a paragon, and I sincerely doubt that I would find a better candidate. But if I keep her qualifications in mind, if she says no, and I think it would be discourteous of me to approach her before I was offered the position, so she doesn't even know about it. Hopefully she still doesn't know about it. If she refuses it, I would keep those same qualities and move forward. The person that I selected would have to have all of those qualities and would themselves have to be a paragon. There could be no trust issues. There could be nothing. In other words, that person actually has to be the person. And that's my standard. Because if that guy's going to be with me, he's got to live up to that standard. Thank you.
Candidate Jacob Zach, what are the qualities you will be looking for in a deputy chief?
Thank you for the question. The qualities I'm looking for, the first one is a passion. You have to have passion for this job or for this position. Whether you're just a line officer, a supervisor, AC, a captain, a chief, you have to have passion for what you're doing. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be successful in doing it. So passion, a dedication to the job, to the position itself. The deputy chief is in charge of basically doing the day-to-day operations of the department, while the chief is doing the administrative and the head of the department. So, like was mentioned before, when the chief is not there, you have to have someone you can trust, someone who's going to be there, whose main purpose is to represent the department and the people of the department, and someone who has integrity, empathy, and more than anything else, that has the knowledge and leadership to do the job. I'm looking for someone who is a leader first and foremost, because that person will be at the top. And he or she needs to be able to discuss different situations and issues with the chief and not necessarily agree with me. I'm not looking for someone who is a yes person. I want someone who tells me like it is, straight up. And then we can come to a decision. And basically, as a chief, I'm responsible for that final decision. And we can agree to disagree. I'm looking for someone who will support my decision, although not agree with my rationale on how I got to that decision. So a deputy chief needs to be someone who can go and talk to anyone in the department, whether it be sworn, unsworn, in the community, and have no issues, have an education, someone who's up and coming, who will have many years in that position. So we're not having a turnover in a couple of years or what have you. So someone who still has a career left to grow as the deputy chief and possibly at one point take over as a chief. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. You'll be happy to know this is the last question. It's a long one. We saved the best for last, right? We start with candidate Ramos.
Lucky me.
The commission has been favorably impressed with your resume, your law enforcement experience, and the answers you provided to our written questions. All these things paint you in a very positive light, indicate you are well qualified to be the next chief of Maui Police Department. If the commission offers you the position of chief, the next step in the process is an extensive background check. With this background check, will this background check reveal any negative events in your past, such as sustained complaints for discrimination, employee grievances regarding your management style, improper use of government funds, or disciplinary actions? If so, please explain.
That's a very good question. The chief has to have a lot of integrity. He has to have a history of making the right decisions and not being involved in harassment in the workplace and situations like that. To answer your question, the answer is there's not going to be any issues with my history. You've heard from a few people that disagreed with my management styles. But my attempt always, when it comes to addressing and holding people accountable, is to make the officer better. Why? Because a better officer provides better service to the community. I have nothing criminal in my background. There was one investigation that took place when I was a rookie when I miscalculated funds, but I was exonerated from that. When it comes to discipline, my career and the history of my career has been exemplary. And I've been very fortunate. No, you won't find anything. And my answer.
Thank you very much. Okay. Candidate Ferreira. The Police Commission has been favorably impressed with your resume, your law enforcement experience, and the answers you provided to our written questions. All of these things paint you in a very positive light and indicate you are well qualified to be the next chief of Maui Police Department. The Commission offers you the position of chief. The next step in the process is an extensive background check. Will this background check reveal any negative events in your past, such as sustained complaints for discrimination, employee grievances regarding your management style, improper use of government funds, or disciplinary actions? If so, please explain.
I believe negative for the first 4 or 5 you mentioned. Disciplinary actions. As a young officer, I had a few investigations. Some of them were sustained, I believe. But the worst I got was 42 years. I believe are written. The rest was a verbal. Other than that, at the moment, my record should be clean.
Thank you very much for that answer. Okay. Candidate Hudson, the Police Commission has been favorably impressed with your resume, your law enforcement experience, and the answers you provided to our written questions. All of these things paint you in a very positive light and indicate you are well qualified to be the next chief of Maui Police Department. The Commission offers you the position of chief. The next step in the process is an extensive background check. Will this background check reveal any negative events in your past, such as sustained complaints for discrimination, employee grievances regarding your management style, improper use of government funds, or disciplinary actions? If so, please explain.
First 3 items, negative, negative, negative. On the 4th item, disciplinary action, I was suspended in 1985 following a DUI accident in which I reported a procedural abnormality to the prosecutor's office rather than reporting it to my lieutenant. As a result, I got suspended for not following the proper reporting procedures. That's 1985. It's still like an open wound. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Okay, candidate Jacobzak, the Police Commission has been favorably impressed with your resume, your law enforcement experience, and the answers you provided to our written questions. All of these things paint you in a very positive light and indicate you are well qualified to be the next chief of the Maui Police Department. If the Commission offers you the position of chief, the next step in the process is an extensive background check. Will this background check reveal any negative events in your past, such as sustained complaints for discrimination, employee grievances regarding your management style, improper use of government funds, or disciplinary actions? If so, please explain.
Thank you for the question. For the first, again, I'm going to reiterate 3 or 4 of those scenarios. I would never be involved in those type of incidents anyway. That's not how I treat people. So I don't have anything related to how people are treated or how they should be treated. And as far as funds, no misuse of funds in any throughout my career. The last one, having any disciplinary action, I will admit, yeah, I did have some learning moments, as I like to call them. I think one was from a motor vehicle accident, responding to a major motor vehicle crash, and trying to get there on my beat before my beat partners, and get into a motor vehicle accident. I think I was written on that one. I also was involved, I think, in an off-duty, I think, unauthorized off-duty. I responded to another officer's request to work on his off-duty, and found out later that it wasn't authorized. But I take my responsibility for my actions. Again, I take them as learning experiences because they never happen again. And those were very early in my career. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Pelletier, the Police Commission has been favorably impressed with your resume, your law enforcement experience, and the answers you provided to our written questions. All of these things paint you in a very positive light and indicate you are well qualified to be the next Chief of Maui Police Department. If the Commission offers you the position of Chief, the next step in the process is an extensive background check. Will this background check reveal any negative events in your past, such as sustained complaints for discrimination, employee grievances regarding your management style, improper use of government funds, or disciplinary actions? If so, please explain.
I have never had a sustained disciplinary finding. And as you know from my resume, I've been vetted at the very highest level, and my background has the very highest degree of scrutiny. To that end, let me just say, since this is the last question, much mahalo for this opportunity to come in front of you.
Pardon? Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
There we go.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Yeah. Good
Much-
eyes. I'm so involved in listening to the answer, I'm not even
I
looking.
get a few seconds back if I run long with it.
Yeah,
So-
there we go.
So
Give him his time.
much mahalo for this opportunity to be here. I had made the comment, I felt like you guys are movie stars because I've watched you through an iPad for the better part of a year, if you will. I am truly dedicated to this position. I know that organizational change takes 5 to 7 years, and I am committed to seeing that change through and beyond and to the next phase, which is succession planning. I have the education required to be the chief of police for Maui. I've made it a point to better myself and always continue to be a student. I will always be a student here, and I will make it a point to learn and understand the culture. In my first 100 days, I've made a commitment to get 24 hours of formal and informal education, and I already have 8 hours committed by a former teacher in Molokai. And I will do everything I can to better myself and better the agency. I have the experience that it takes. I understand what it's like to run a very similar sized organization and area of assignment, and to do so at the very highest level. I have the proven ability to understand tourist-based policing, community-based policing, and the important balance between those two so that everybody feels included. I've led through the most critical incidents, and I've done everything I can to better my people and better my community. The beauty of Hawaii is in its land, it's in its flowers, but most of all, it's in the hearts of its people. And I know my wife, my children, and I will always be guests of Hawaii. And a good guest cares for, nurtures, protects, and appreciates the opportunity. And although we weren't born here, we'll take our last breaths here. In April of this year, you asked the community, whom shall we send? And the community responded to you. Send us a transformative leader. Send us an inspirational leader. Send us an engaged leader, a compassionate leader, a driven leader. Send us a leader that will listen to us. Send us a leader that will take this agency forward. I am here in front of you. Send me. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. This completes the interviews of the final candidates for Chief of Police. I'd like to thank all the candidates for your interest in becoming our county's next Chief of Police and for your answers today. I know we put you through quite a ringer in terms of the changes in schedule, so I really appreciate your patience and forbearance with all that's happened during the week. I thank again the public for that as well. I would like to thank the commissioners and the public for sticking with us throughout the day. I would like to especially thank the University of Hawaii, Maui College. Deanna, thank you. Great job. And their security and their IT and AV staff. Thanks, Angela. And thanks, I didn't get the names of our two camera people here, but thank you. And we want to thank UH Maui College for the use of their facilities and for their forbearance as we made several last-minute requests. I also want to thank Akaku for their flexibility and their expertise. They came through for us, especially allowing us to broadcast this on Channel 54, so more of the public could be involved in this. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank our own commission. Thank you, commissioners, and our county staff. Amy did a great job. Corey, if you're listening, Vincenz, thank you for helping out as well from the Corporation Counsel's office, our own corporation, Deputy Corporation Counsel, Jennifer Owana, and the Corporation Counsel herself, Moana Ludi, and Rochelle, and a bunch of people over at the Corporation Counsel. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank, wait, I already said that. I want to thank Commissioner Kuwahara, who especially worked with the university to make this possible in a socially distanced and appropriate, and working with the university. So I want to give a special shout out to you for doing that and securing the room for the commissioners' use, for the commission's and the public's use. So with that, the meeting will be recessed to October 5th, 2021 at 9 a.m. via Blue Jeans, the same meeting ID number 436-492-036 as stated in the agenda for this special meeting. This meeting is now recessed.